Hello, and we're live. Very sorry about that, folks. I've had some issues here tonight. I've had to run and do errands, and I've literally just landed here. So I've asked my wife to turn the thing on, but she didn't know how. So apologies for me lateness and all as well. Right. Thank you very much. And she's gone ahead and had me tea and me. Right. Sorry, folks. Give me a minute, please. Hang on. Dear. I'm extremely sorry about that, folks. It's just I got caught on the hop and asked to do a job. I had to run, and I'm very sorry. I've had a trip and a heck, and it's so bad outside, and I've had the bomb all the way up to the north coast and back again within an hour, and I didn't make it. I'm 2 minutes late, so I do apologise. And thank you very much for joining me. Oh, the joys of trying to do this and sort of mix it in with your normal life. So at least I'm not coughing and yakking. I suppose I'm a bit out of breath. Evening, Babs, says Bab. Evening, Doc, says Babs. Hello, Babs, how are you? Catch me breath and we'll get going, shall we? Mr. Bungle, hi, Doc. Nice to see you live again. Thanks for joining us again, Mr. Bungle. As I said, I do apologize about that. I'm usually quite organized about these kind of things. And, oh, goodness gracious. So, right, I'll just get settled a wee bit. As I said, I do apologize. Let me see, how's my light? My light's not too bad. Get that in the background. Let's grab our book club stuff. Right. Oh. You gotta run, you've gotta run, don't you? All right. And one more thing, I'm wearing the wrong glasses. This is why everything seems strange. So let's get tacked up. Et voila. And we're on to chapter 11. Right, excellent. And thanks very much for joining me, guys. I hope you're keeping well wherever you're at. And and we're being hit by Storm Eunice. I keep saying this every time I come on. I seem to be talking about us getting hit by a storm at the minute. We've had snow and very, very high winds, and I've been driven down to the north coast there tonight, or up to the north coast, sorry. And I'm just getting blown all over the road. It's very bad. But anyway, enough of stormy north coast Northern Ireland. Let's take ourselves to Arrakis. And this is a chapter where we get to see a little bit of Leto. There we go. And I've called this one They Have Tried to Take the Life of My Son. This is one of these chapters where we get to see a little bit about Leto Atreides finally. As I said, I'm starting to wonder, have I been misjudging him as a father? Let me just adjust this a wee bit here. I think there we go. I think that's a bit better. Get myself in the middle of the screen and see what I'm staring at. There we go. I'm still quite low, aren't I? Hang on. On the general scheme of things. We'll just try that. Sorry about that, folks. As I said, I do apologize for being so badly organized tonight. But let's get cracking anyway. As I said, if you've got any wee comments or questions or ideas, certainly share them, please, and we'll have a wee look into them. There's some interesting stuff in this chapter. And as I said, I wanted to find out much about am I wrong about Leto's parenting skills, etc., this kind of thing. We don't get too much of that, but we do get a little bit of a look at him. And by contrast, I suppose we get Leto's observations of Gurney Halleck in this chapter. And as I said, if we know what Frank's about in terms of his writing, and I'll grab this in a wee bit. Actually, it's out there, and we'll have a chat about it. But Herbert uses Jungian Mandalas, these various kind of spiral patterns, etc., and he likes to put characters opposite each other on them, I suppose, and even consider them in terms of excuse me, archetypes and tones of shadings and of character, if you like. So it's the way he sort of positions characters or the way he creates characters. And if you've noted, then really an awful lot of our chapters, apart from the initial couple, are where we have two characters interacting pretty much. A bit of a mention of some people in the background, Mr. Bungle saying Leto in the movie was the only casting that I didn't like in the movie. Babs Bello, all the worry in the last chapter about Jessica being hysterical, but Leto seems more freaked out about it than Jessica or Paul was. It's a good yes. I mean, what we're kind of, this chapter is really, Babs, is Leto trying to hold it together, isn't it? And it's holding it together with a lot of negative emotions, hatred and rage and this kind of thing, But I still, yes, the word hysterical, I think, is an interesting one when, and it has a very particular use, doesn't it? But yeah, it seems that he's simmering underneath, and I think you get this little bit of self-loathing here with him, this little bit of self-pity, I think. And it kind of, he gets on top of it, I think, but the idea, I suppose, pointing out that they have tried to take the life of my son, we're going to hear that line 5 times in this chapter, and it's going to continually punctuate, Leto's thoughts. So it's about time we got a decent sort of look at his ideas, how he's behaved so far. Not altogether impressed by him, to be honest. But Leto in the movie was the only casting that I didn't like in the movie. We've talked about this, I suppose, in terms of Leto's description. And as much as we don't have an exact physical description for certain things with Paul, we do know that he's tall and olive-skinned. Simply put, depends on what you think about olive-skinned, but it's also kind of described as like almost very dark with a greenish tint, I think. So that's how Leto. And as for the rest of it, I mean, the olive thing, I think, is partly, a suggestion of the Greek, a little bit of a nod to the Greek myths of the Atreides themselves. And I actually thought that he was kind of cast. I thought his casting was to make him look a bit more like, I don't know. I think Jürgen Prochnow had a good sense of the character. But again, it's one of those things, how are you going to cast the? And I didn't think I don't think now who played Leto in the film? Oscar Isaac. I mean, he's quite prolific in science fiction films, isn't he? I didn't think he was old enough. Believe it or not, I think Leto should be an older man. But yeah, well, I think the casting of Leah Kynes, I think, is a big problem for that film. Just what they've done to the Kynes character, Lynch nailed Leto with his guy William Hurt, didn't do it for me. Yeah, Jürgen Prochnow in the Lynch film is a very, very good actor. Of course, he's the captain from Das Boot, isn't he? He's very good acting chops. And again, I thought he was excellent, and I thought he had good chemistry with the actor that plays Jessica as well. That's something I thought was a bit missing from the new Dune film. Hello, says Lord Crump. We'll just say hello to everybody. We'll get ourselves going because we had a bit of I had the rush here, big time there. So we were just saying, giving my apologies and being a wee bit out of breath and getting organized, but we're all good. So hi, Lord Crunk. Let's just run down. Hi, Lord Crunk. In the book, Leto is very aware he is doomed. I get the sense that it's kind of all his own doing in many ways, I think. Good morning, good people, says Brad. Hi, Brad. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're keeping well. And morning, Brad. Ready for Monday? No one is ever ready for Monday. Oscar Isaac is too soft for Leto. That's an interesting point, I suppose. If you're not ready for Monday, try, is it Monday starts on Saturday? Which is that, just for a very quick, if I know we're doing the Dune Book Club, but there you go. That's a cracker. I've got to stop saying that. I sound like Frank Carson, don't I? Is this the one? Yeah, this is insane. If anybody hasn't read this, read this for an absolute totally bonkers book. Things about divans and stuff. I love it. It's based on that kind of Soviet era joke, isn't it, about Mondays and the week working for the weekend, this kind of thing, isn't it? Snap citywide train strike, no backup buses, can't travel the 45 kilometers to work. Bummer. Well, I suppose work from home or don't go to work. Yeah, there's all sorts going on, isn't there, at the minute these days? Snap citywide train strike. Yeah, I think our university lecturers are on strike here, looking for more money as usual. They're not worth it at all. As I've been saying for a long time. Last, I've never been asked to join a union. Actually, though I've worked as a lecturer, obviously, and all the other lecturers out campaigning for more money, and I've always thought that I was actually perfectly well paid for what I did, so I never bothered. But then, yeah, not a fan of unions because I've been treated like dirt by them, I have to say. But anyway, oh, there we go. Let's spin her around, folks, and get on with the books rather than we can keep some of this stuff for other times. I suppose I'm digressing, but yeah, Leto. I mean, Leto. As much as we're on the book club, yeah, why not? I'm happy to chat away about this, folks, rather than go all business about it. But he is a character that he's tricky, I think, as a character because we're supposed to admire him. And I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of Dune fans might just sort of looking at the media that's out there. I think a lot of people like Leto as a character, and he, and I think they, oh, poor Leto, this kind of thing. And as much as maybe he's a bit hard done by in the book, I don't think he garners that much. He doesn't garner that much sympathy with me, but I think he is seen as a sympathetic character by a lot of readers of the book, and because he's doomed, this sense of doom. I'm going to turn that down a wee bit, again, just sorry. Seems a wee bit. There we go. Maybe just the way I'm sitting tonight. So, as always, folks, we start off with a wee epigraph. And of course, it's kind of what we're talking about, isn't it? We'll just read it out loud here for you. So, we'll start off. It is said that the Duke Leto himself, it is said that the Duke Leto blinded himself to the perils of Arrakis, that he walked heedlessly into the pit. Would it not be more likely to suggest he had lived so long in the presence of extreme danger, he misjudged a change in its intensity? Excuse me. Or is it possible he deliberately sacrificed himself that his son might find a better life? All evidence indicates the Duke was a man not easily hoodwinked. So it's one of those things, isn't it? It's if you want to pick it apart, you could start off with, it is said that the Duke Leto blinded himself to the perils of Arrakis. Who said that? Why, it's a good question, especially as we're reading a historian's work. This is from a Muad'Dib family commentaries by the Princess Irulan. So I just think that this little bit here stinks of propaganda. It really does. That he walked heedlessly into the pit. So there's the criticisms. Okay, he blinded himself to the perils of Arrakis. He did it himself. He wasn't blind to the perils. He blinded himself, and he walked heedlessly into the pit. Would it be more likely to suggest? Now, that's a phrase that absolutely stinks of sophistry. It is sophistry. Pretty much, it's a good introduction to that he had lived so long in the presence of extreme danger that he misjudged a change in its intensity. So rather than he blinded himself, he did this to himself. He made his own mistakes. Was it not more the case that he just misjudged how violent this universe is, really? Excuse me 1 wee second, folks. I'm so sorry about this. There's all sorts of disasters happening up here tonight. Where is it? Oh. Right, there's no one around to help. Okay. Right, sorry about that. There's nobody about. Everybody's abandoned ship here, and there's stuff going off in the Rex room, and nobody around to look at it. And I think the doggies have left as well. I'm so sorry. We're badly organised tonight, I have to say. It's just been one of those things that invaded our night. And we were sitting here an hour before coming online, all ready to go and all happy, and just had to run out the door. So I do apologise, folks. I hope that's me settled for a wee bit now. But where were we? Yeah, so did he just simply not get that, the level of violence and extreme danger in this universe seems to be a constant threat? Did he miss out simply that it's escalated? I suppose is I think what it's suggesting there. And the other suggestion then is it possible that he deliberately sacrificed himself that his son might find a better life? All evidence indicates that the Dune was a man not easily hoodwinked. So, and I don't know what you guys think about this. It'd be good to hear your opinions. As you've, hopefully, you've read this chapter this evening. What we think of Leto. Is he easily hoodwinked? Does he blind himself? I suppose these are the questions. Suggest he walked heedlessly into the pit. We're going to get some descriptions of Arrakis, I suppose, in terms of hell, if you like, and there's one pit, and we've got a few biblical quotations actually in this chapter tonight as well. So the key words there, I suppose, misjudged its intensity. I've actually put that's fair enough. Has he? This suggestion, could it be more likely that he misjudged the severity of the threat? That's fair enough, yeah, I suppose. But then the way it goes on, is it possible he deliberately sacrificed himself so that his son might find a better life? And I've put flat no, and that is propaganda. All evidence, and what comes next is a sort of almost non sequitur. It doesn't really follow. All evidence indicates the Duke was not easily hoodwinked. And I've written next to that, does it? So again, we're unaware of this evidence to a degree. We're being told by a future historian who's got ties to the family of Muad'Dib, actually would end up technically being Leto's daughter-in-law, if you like, is the person who's writing this family commentary. Not that he survives that long. And I've just put sounds like propaganda, and I want this is propaganda we're reading. But again, just our little epigraph at the start. I think they're very telling, these little things. And they're not always honest with us, I think, Shalom all, says Chaya. Shalom Chaya, thanks for joining us. Been a bit of a chaotic one tonight, but we're just about to get started, so there you go. So we were just having a wee quick read at the epigraph. And very much a Leto chapter, but also a Gurney chapter, I think. What's interesting is I think in this case we should have a wee consideration of the both of the men together, what we think of them by the end of the chapter, I think. So first off, we have Leto. He's at the landing control tower outside Arrakis, and we get a bit of staging, I suppose, again from Frank. We've got it's the first moon of the night, and interestingly, he describes it as an oblate silver coin. The night's first moon on a oblate silver coin hung well above the southern horizon. Excuse me. And then beneath it, the jagged cliffs of the shield wall shone like parched icing through a dust haze. To his left, the lights of Arrakis glowed in the haze, yellow, white, blue. So I thought that was a little bit odd imagery, I suppose. I've just put cake and just went, that's a bit odd imagery, I suppose. The jagged cliffs of the shield wall shone like parched icing, dust haze, like a bit of icing, a little dusting on the cake, that kind of thing. I thought it was a little bit odd. Possibly, why that kind of imagery in the coin. As much as whenever we look at the moons of Arrakis, we tend to think of them in terms of their shadow. In this case, it's coin. I suppose if you think about it, maybe what the shadows represent, the two moons of Arrakis, one has the hand, and the other one has, of course, the mouse shadow, Muad'Dib. Both of them are very important to Paul. And have a fair amount to do with his actual character, if you like, even his choosing of that name, Muad'Dib. But in this case, whenever we get the moon associated with Leto, it's a silver coin, I suppose. I think it's money is interesting. Wealth is the thing that we get there. Of course, a little bit of cake. Can he have his cake and eat it? Possibly, that's what I was thinking. I might be totally wrong. Sometimes I think some of these wee things I come up with are quite whimsical, to be honest with you. But it's fun to have a wee think about it. Really, the introduction here, that this description, particularly with the jagged cliffs of the shield wall, it kind of mirrors, links back into the previous chapter. And if I could just have a wee look at that, was it the wink at the cliff? And I think we consistently, we were talking about the silos stretching out to the shield wall. I suppose as Jessica's kind of looking out across and seeing this signal at the end of the previous chapter, kind of off in that direction there, this is where Leto's at. So I suppose with the different lights, the yellow lights, the white lights, the blue lights, the sense of the moon links us up maybe to that false star from the previous chapter. And we start to get some of Leto's thoughts, I suppose, which is, it's about time we got to know him a bit, isn't it? It's he's one of these characters, probably we hear more about him in the initial epigraphs than anyone else, I think. And yet we don't meet him for quite some time. I think this is only really our third sort of interaction with him. So Leto's thoughts are to do with these political notices that have been put out. The notice is posted now above with his signature all through the populous places of the planet. And the notices, I suppose this is the public message. We talked about previously, public messages and private messages. So here's the public declaration. Our sublime Padishah Emperor has charged me to take possession of this planet and end all dispute. And I suppose keyword there, possession, ownership, if you like, and dispute. And interestingly, if you want to pick the language apart within this note from Leto II, our sublime Padishah Emperor. We share this, he's our emperor, he's your emperor and my emperor, I think. And what we get to talk a wee bit about it is, I suppose that the interesting thing for Leto is the ritualistic formality of it touched him with a feeling of loneliness. And I think that's really interesting little phrase. And I'll tell you why. Ritualistic formality. In terms of what we were talking about, the heroes, the stuff to do with heroes, etc. This is particularly the hero in Ritual is Raglan's book, which is a big influence on Herbert's thinking about heroes, I suppose. And there is a ritualistic formality to this, etc. But it's just, I thought it was an interesting word. And I could think of all other sorts of words to use there, but ritualistic. And it just kind of pinged a wee thing in my head, I suppose. I'll just catch up with your thoughts quickly. Mr. Bungle says, I think he thought he could pull it off, although he knew everything was against him. There's Cynthia saying, hi all, sorry to be late. Not at all, Cynthia. We're just getting started. We've had a bit of a crazy start to the evening, so it's all going smooth now. So thanks for joining us. So for me, Leto is a hopeful character. That characteristic makes him likable for me. That's interesting. So there's a couple of things I was going to point out about Leto, but if we consider a few things about him, and especially when we know that Arrakis is a trap, if you like, for House Atreides, one of the things that we often talk about is that the first step in avoiding a trap, and that the key word I want you to think about is avoiding it. Avoiding is knowing of its existence, this kind of thing. It's all about avoiding a trap, not walking. So to walk into a trap, then you're done. I suppose you haven't considered avoidance. If you see what I mean, we're off on another topic. How to walk into a trap and survive it is an entirely different thing than how to avoid a trap, I would say. They're just not the same. Avoiding means not interacting with the trap in any way, I suppose, getting out of its road. Excuse me. Hope is an interesting thing here, and if we apply it to Leto, there's Mr. Bungle, we've had a wee chat about this. The word hope turns up quite a bit in this book, and especially when we get the hope with these. Hope has an association with the Bene Gesserit here. Let me see. I was just wondering, could I find a wee quick example of it? We'll be going back a wee bit. But every time, for example, we get characters who hope, and we keep sort of getting reminded that we shouldn't, hope clouds observation. Isn't that's it? The Bene Gesserit aphorism there. Hope clouds observation, and every time we get, particularly Bene Gesserit characters being hopeful, they're kind of, whoa, be careful, So hope, in terms of what we were talking about, as in, we've got a lot of classical mythology associations. Hope is Elpis, and we were talking. We had a wee chat the other day that, in terms of the story of Pandora's box, that hope remains inside the box, that it can be interpreted in one of two ways: that hope is not in the world, or hope remains in the box for the time it's needed, if you like. But also just that hope is often just wishful thinking. That if you hope something will happen based on nothing other than wishes and prayers, then it probably won't. I suppose. But I agree. I think he's hopeful, because, to be honest with you, at this point in the book, we're all told for Leto nothing. He's doomed. I suppose that the doom of man, this kind of thing. But we're also not 100% sure about the whole prescience thing. We have them talked about in past tense, and I think, as somebody pointed out the other week, let me see. In terms of what we actually do know about him, let me have a quick look. I think we were talking about Mount Idaho on the map, but was it the Shrine of Leto there? Oh, it just says Shrine there. Yeah, on the cut. So I suppose after you get past the introduction of the map, the first thing you'll hit in Dune is the cartographic notes for the map. And if you actually read down, sadly we know he's doomed, because if you look at the entry for Harg Pass in the cartographic notes, you'll see it says the Shrine of Leto's skull overlooks this pass. So it depends on how much detail we're paying, how much attention to detail we're paying, but we should know that he is doomed to die no matter what. And it would be nice to be hopeful for him, wouldn't it? Would it be nice? I think that's part of it. At this point, you're kind of going, I wonder, can he get out of this somehow? And it's almost a kind of a distraction, isn't it, from Paul in some senses? Because that's kind of what you do to your hero, isn't it? That you pile danger upon danger upon danger. Will the hero pile through? And usually there's a kind of a, things go downhill before they go uphill, if you see what I mean. So in many ways, I suppose it's one of the reasons why I wanted to point out the word ritualistic, just in association with the hero, that we can overlap Leto as a hero to the Atreides and to Paul, etc., and to the people of Caladan, this kind of thing. And we're even told that how much the Emperor really admires this man. He's one of those, what a guy. And we're going to find here that there are some noble intentions to him. And they're going to tie us to the Atreides historically as well, I suppose. So, but yeah, we get a little bit of his thoughts here. But I do agree, Mr. Bungle. I think he is a hopeful character up until the point, where and it becomes, do we look at it as a sacrifice? You get a lot of that talk in this country, I suppose. People who've blown themselves up with bombs, who've been out to try and kill innocent people, and you'll see them, pictures of them, calling them heroes, what their noble sacrifice, etc. Usually when they blew themselves to bits. But it's quite appalling. This kind of propaganda exists where I live all the time. It's everywhere. And it's a class thing actually as well, which we're going to talk about. So let's have a look at Leto's thoughts. The ritualistic formality of it touched him with a feeling of loneliness. So we should be getting a little bit of sympathy for him. But there's more to this. Who was fooled by that fatuous legalism? And it shows you he has contempt for this message. Excuse me. Or certainly this form of law, I suppose. Not the Fremen. Certainly. He's certain about that. Not the house's minor who controlled the interior trade of Arrakis and were Harkonnen creatures almost to a man. So he starts off with this little letter, but his thoughts really take him straight there. We learn a little bit about what's going on in Arrakis in terms of trade. And I suppose in that sense, the minor houses, we're told, control all the interior trade. And that they're Harkonnen creatures almost to a man. Another male, again, there's a lot of, we'll talk about the sort of, I think, I think we're going to get a sense of the military being male only here. And I just kind of wanted to point out man here. Harkonnen creatures almost to a man here, but we're going to have this term, or terms to do with maledom, if you like, maleness, in relation to the army in a little bit. So here we go. They have tried, and again, this is they have tried to take the life of my son. This thought, and it's got an exclamation mark on it, by the way, every time. That's a shout in his head. He's shouting, he's exclaiming, he's not happy, and we've already. Let's just back up a wee bit. Oh, sorry, is this the first time we've heard it? It is, isn't it? Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of my notes here. They have tried to take the life of my son. First time we hear this, there we go. Sorry, I was jumping ahead. And we're going to hear this phrase 5 times in this chapter. A bit of his, the rage was difficult to suppress. So the question I've asked here, guys, is does he suppress this rage here in this chapter? Does he keep the anger down? Excuse me. So we get the lights. The action continues a little bit. Things are moving on a bit. Lights of a moving vehicle. And we get a little bit of exposition. And it gives us another point in time, I suppose, lining up the action of what we've had already in the previous chapters, which was a bit almost jagged, if you like. If you I thought it was like moving 2 forward, 1 back, almost like that. As in the interactions between Paul, Yui, Mapes, and Jessica. I just thought how it played with time there. So we could almost be not too sure, but of course the moon is telling us the sun is set, so it's later on. And lights of a moving vehicle, a little exposition here, I said. And again, we're talking about hope, I suppose, but he hopes. All right, number 7. He hoped it was the guard and troop carrier bringing Paul. The delay was galling, even though he knew it was prompted by caution on the part of Howit's lieutenant. And this is the lieutenant from the previous chapter as well. We're going to get a little bit about him, I think, which will actually tell us more about Leto. So he accepts the delay and understands caution of Howit's lieutenant. Caution from the Bene Gesserit and Paul Atreides' point of view is a positive trait in this book, I think. And I'm not too sure, arguably, if what Leto is piling in here, it's all such a rush, isn't it? And as much as the key element to, I think, the danger to the Atreides, we'll get it mentioned here. It's what they're trying to buy when they get here on Arrakis initially. They're trying to buy time, aren't they? They're not organized. They're not ready for this, and you get a sense from Leto that if they can dig in and get some time, that they'll be okay. But it's about biding their time, and I think as Leto's hope, I think, comes in that. Excuse me. As long as I can sort of stay here long enough, we can get organized and we'll be okay. Lord Kronk says, later Leto thinks, here I make my stand. And he thought with a touch of sadness, I must rule with eye and claw as the hawk among lesser birds. That Leto will die early is not evident from the skull shrine over Hard Pass. One might suspect it, but it's not certain. The map is from after the events of the novel, so you have to have read the book. Yeah, I suppose it's a good point. We don't know when the book is written, but it's history, so everybody can be dead, I suppose. Yeah. I think there's enough wee clues though, Devon, that he's doomed. I don't know. You get that sense. One of the other things that we're talking about, I suppose, that there's overlaps of Leto onto Paul, and we talk about the divine association with Leto. one of the characters that Paul Atreides is heavily modelled on, based on in terms of Lord Raglan's ritualistic approach to myth, is Oedipus. And I'd argue that there's a lot of the Oedipus elements on Paul kind of really begin when he takes up the throne. I'd argue there's different steps, and he doesn't comply to all of them. But in this sense, as much as we have a sort of a range of individuals within the Theban myths, and I think I've sort of said that the father of Oedipus, Laius, is a very good model for the Baron Harkonnen. There's aspects of Leto, I think, that match Oedipus, and what I'm particularly, I suppose, the thing I'm trying to get to here is Oedipus's myth is unusual in that he is doomed, absolutely doomed. And this is the real problem for everyone. I think if you look into the Oedipus myth properly, check out Apollodorus, check out Robert Graves, get a few other different mythographers, and see what you can read on it. It is the doom of Oedipus, that the fate has caused this. Not even the gods can stop it. And it's all no. It's like I suppose the modern day equivalent would be like watching a car crash. Oh no, please don't. And you just know. And the gods are kind of like that with Oedipus as well. It's just, he's a noble guy. So what happens to Leto here? I think there's a massive overlay with Oedipus, and it's that, but particularly it's that sense of doom. And again, if you think about it in terms of what we know, excuse me, as we go, we're kind of a little bit prescient. We've got the omniscient narrator, informing us. We've got the historical records informing us, and then we have the action within the book, and they're not all quite aligning. But it is interesting, isn't it? I have to say, once we start poking at this a little bit. But there we go. Yeah, I definitely think there's a chunk of Oedipus in Leto's character. That sense of tragedy and doom. Because as much as he's an Atreides, I'd argue there's not too much of either of those brothers, the Atreidai here. If you see what I mean, not in Leto. And of course, we have that divine overlay of Leto, the goddess, the Greek goddess, And we've had a good wee chat about that. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty interesting character. It's all about the package and how he's presented, isn't it? As much as I was wondering about this, am I maligning Leto's character a fair bit in terms of his parenting skills and blah blah blah, etc., his romantic skills and never being there? And I was just going that we were talking about it. Is there a certain amount of hyperbole, and it's really from this point of view that if we're thinking about the future documents, the Princess Irulan ones here, is this to enshrine him, as part of the Atreides myth? Sort of a retcon, if you know what I mean. And of course, rather than we could get through this and argue that he's an incompetent leader of a great house who brings his house down by his own poor judgment and refusal to listen to advice. We're told that everyone has warned him, that Howit's warned him, that the Bene Gesserit, everybody's warned him, and he's not listening. He's looking to take a chance, I suppose. And by the time we get to the end of this question, this is what we have to ask ourselves. It's kind of, we can consider these questions as we go through the book, but the one that it's kind of asking is it possible he did this as a noble self-sacrifice to have so that his son could have a really wonderful life? And I argue that getting yourself killed isn't a good way of, providing for your child's future, if you see what I mean. But it does, and we're going to get a little hint of the man here. The propaganda machine is, I think it's always around him, Yeah. So where are we? Let's just catch up to where I'd caught. Let's see. So yeah. We're talking about the caution of Howit's lieutenant and the second interruption of this thought into his head. They have tried to take the life of my son. And again, it's got an exclamation mark there. It's not a mild thought. It's shouting, and it's inside his mind. He shook his head to drive out the angry thoughts. oh dear, excuse me, glanced back at the field where 5 of his own frigates were posted around the rim like monolithic sentries. I think that's quite an interesting little sort of turn of phrase there, like monolithic sentries. And it kind of gives a sort of odd little picture in your mind, if you see what I mean, that kind of thing. And again, it kind of starts to remind me of these little mandalas and so on. Excuse me. I'll grab that whenever I'm taking a wee break, about halfway through, folks. I'll grab the, it's just, I think it's sitting out there. I'll grab the Carl Jung archetypes of the collective unconscious stuff, and I'll bring that in and show you a couple of, I don't think, no, they're both out in the hall there. I'll show you some of these Jungian mandalas that Herbert uses when he's setting up. He uses them for all sorts of things, according to him anyway. Whether it's true or not, I'm not altogether sure, but I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be. In fact, I think all of that stuff's pretty, why not? I think he did do that, but some of the stuff that he used to talk about writing is haiku first before writing it into English. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I think that's part of Frank's own propaganda machine. Let's see. So yes, they've tried to take the life of my son for the second time. He shook his head to drive out these angry thoughts. And again, this little run ends with another thought: better a cautious delay than. And then, you see, his thoughts are kind of fragmented here. This is what I was going to point out. We have rage after the first one. He's in a state of rage, if you like, if we believe the words in the text. After this one, is that the first one? Yeah. Again, the angry thoughts. Is he calming down a bit? But if you actually, what I thought here was just this thought process is fragmented here, and I think it's a sign that his anger's. When you're angry, you don't think right. It's as simple as that. You do, all sorts of little things happen up here, with hormones and chemicals and stuff like that, and your brain basically becomes quite. When you're angry, you become quite stupid. You're not as sharp as you should be. Put it that way. It's best to stay calm, isn't it? He shook his head to drive out the angry thoughts, glanced back at the field where the 5 of his own frigates were posted around the rim like monolithic sentries. Better a cautious delay than. The lieutenant was a good one, he reminded himself. A man marked for advancement, completely loyal. Our sublime Padishah Emperor. That's 3 different conversations going on. Better a cautious delay than. It doesn't finish that. Oh, back to the lieutenant. That's another. Okay. Oh, our sublime emperor. That letter again getting into his head, and then he's on to the people. So Leto's thoughts here are running. And so we're getting unfinished thoughts, jumping back to the wording of the letter. What about the lieutenant? The people of the city. And I think certainly if we think about it a wee bit, it's a funny little jump about there, isn't it? I just think that's got something on it. And we have that better a cautious and cautious delay, and he loses that train of thought, doesn't he? Caution. And we talk about how important the word caution is in this book, particularly with the Bene Gesserit Paul, and we have this lieutenant associated with caution here, who seems to be reasonably intelligent and shrewd. And when Leto's thinking about caution, slips out of his head. I think we're getting clues here. And it's up to us to make our own, I suppose, own opinions on it, if we even want to, or just enjoy the book on that level. But where are we? So the public note versus, and then here we go. This run of thoughts, I suppose, leads to what's quite an interesting little bit here. Very quickly, just the lieutenant, is a good one, marked for advance, completely loyal. Completely loyal. An absolute. Nothing that wouldn't buy this guy's loyalty. That's the way. There's a lot of that kind of thinking here as well, I think. Right. So our Padishah, sublime Padishah Emperor, public statement I've written here. And then he thinks, we talk about the private note. Here we go. So if the people of this decadent garrison city, decadence, could only see the emperor's private note to his noble duke. The disdainful allusions to veiled men and women. But what else is to want? What else is one to expect of barbarians whose dearest dream is to live outside the ordered security of the Fifrelites? Now, this is the Emperor's note here. And that gives us a little bit of insight into him. And then we're going to have a this wee bit, and then we'll have a wee stop and chat about this. The Duke felt in this moment that his own dearest dream. So we have this little bit of alliteration here. We have this, the dearest dream of these barbarians. And we're about to be told about Leto's dearest dream. Let's just point out a few wee things here. I suppose disdainful allusions to veiled men and women. We get that in the world in this day and age, don't we? What else is to expect of barbarians? Barbarians whose dearest dream is to live outside of the ordered security of the Fifrelike system. Now, there's tons here in that statement, to be honest with you. How the Emperor looks at the people of Arrakis, etc., veiled men and women, disdainful allusions. Like, barely almost as if barely that's even acceptable to call them that. Barbarians, I think, is an interesting term for those who know it. That's to do with the Greeks, isn't it? And I think it's quite a funny wee term. I'm just going to catch up with some of your comments for a wee minute, folks. Let's see, David. Oh, we've done that one, haven't we, already? Sorry, let me just catch up here. No, it was not. Sorry, that was just Devon saying that Leto will die early is not evident from the Skullshine or Hard Pass. Yeah, we might suspect it, but it's not certain. Does the phrase decadent garrison city refer to Arrakis? If so, that's quite different than what we heard earlier in the Great Hall. Maybe the attack on Paul is souring his view. Yeah, well, let me see. Garrison cities are interesting places, I suppose. Decadent garrison city, yeah. If the people of that's Arrakis, I would think. Hang on. Right, who's saying that there? Cynthia. That's Leto's thoughts, isn't it? If only the people of this decadent garrison city could only see the Emperor's private note. So the little bit that comes next, the disdainful allusion to veiled women, blah, 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 that's the Emperor. But it's Leto who describes it as a decadent garrison city. I must make a wee note of that. City. There we go. So yeah, it's hard to get a sense. One of the things I thought was absolutely appalling in the new Dune film was the city. What city? It just looked like I don't know, bizarre. I have a silly question, says Mr. Bungle. There are no silly questions, Mr. Bungle. About the difference between the title of Duke and Baron. Why Herbert gave them to Leto and Harkonnen different titles? Okay. A Duke is a much higher ranked title. I suppose baronies go back to robber barons and things like that, but a dukedom is pretty high up on the royal ranks, if you like. So after your monarch, in this country, I suppose we're the Prince of Wales and then the Duke of York, isn't it? So there you go. Not in this country, I suppose the United Kingdom. Not that they're Irish or English. I suppose maybe they are English. Yeah, so a baron is a much smaller, lower down rank, I suppose. It's a rank of nobility, yeah. It's often hereditary, I suppose. An aristocrat who ranks higher than a lord or knight, but lower than a viscount or a count. There you go. There we go. Great Britain and Ireland per baronium. Feudal tenure, yeah, etc. This kind of thing. I suppose the royal families over the years, they buy people with service, etc. And here's a little barony, a little area of land that you can run and tax for us, this kind of thing, I suppose. So a dukedom would be much larger. I think one of the richest men in Britain is the Duke of is it the Duke of Cornwall? I don't know who owns it, but he basically is half that part of that country's landlord. He owns all the land. Not too sure. Oh, what am I talking about? Of course, that's the Prince of Wales, isn't it? I'm stupid. There you go. So the Prince of Wales is also the Duke of Cornwall. The title of the peerage of England traditionally held the eldest son of the reigning British monarch, previously the English monarch. It's not him I'm thinking of. There's another one. Is it? There's somebody who's very, very rich in Britain, in the United Kingdom, and England, and it's one of those titles, and he's just loaded from it. But it's just all land ownership from, and arguably, if you think about things like Arthurian stories and go back to that kind of period and forward up into the Middle Ages and the Crusades and stuff like that, a lot of these people would be robber barons. They're just the guys with the armor and the weapons that go around and take what they want, and then they set up a little bit of, essentially that's what a king is, by the way, as well. If you want to go to the old definitions of what kings and queens are, they're just the people who had the most cattle originally. So that's what a king is in Ireland, by the way, is a guy who's got more cows. And there are loads of them. So, essentially, a king in Ireland is a person who owns a lot of cows. But there you go. It's not a silly question at all. But I'm sure Wikipedia would have a little kind of different ones. But the dukedoms are pretty high, I would say. Baronets and baronies and kind of a little bit lower. And I think it's that the Leto is meant to have direct blood related to the emperor's family. Whereas I suppose that I think it's suggested with the Baron that he's bought his barony, if you like, through Chome directorships or something like that. That the title, excuse me, that the title's possibly bought, or which is not unlike a lot of peerages in Britain these days. I think a lot of them are, it's all a bit dodgy, just to say the least. So, financial dodgery goes right to the heart of the monarchy, all just right below the Queen, as I'm sure you've all noticed quite recently in the news. Well, there you go. That generation of royals, so the Queen, her husband, and then all of her eldest children, if they were in this country at a certain period of time, my dad would have been their close protection officer. There you go. So that's and a friend of mine once said that he knew I'd moved house an awful lot, but he just said he knew who my dad. He recognized my dad from somewhere, and he couldn't figure out from where. Excuse me. And eventually we did figure it out, that it was he worked for a major accounting firm in Belfast. There's a picture on the wall of them all meeting the Queen. And he'd seen my dad for years and never really noticed that there's my dad in the picture next to him. So there you go, there's a wee story for you. But yeah, it's all that kind of thing. And I think it's, you always have to have a pinch of salt with anybody who thinks that their blood is a better, than everyone else's, this kind of thing. Well, we're going to see this. This is a here we go. Here's Leto's dearest dream. Sorry, just before we get on to it quickly, we were talking about the barbarians, and that's the barbars from the Greek point of view. They thought they were really weird, and I think the word barbarian comes from how the Greeks thought they talked. Like, they went around going burr, something like that. And I think it's meant to be the Berbers originally, where that word barbarian is to do with them. And I think the Greeks thought they were pretty freaky people, because it's my understanding they wore trousers. And the Greeks were, what is, it's one of those interesting things if you have a wee look into it. The Greeks are all good, quite a lot of fun to them, actually, ancient Greeks. So it's a particular interesting word. And as I said, we have the Feuerverlikes system, and that we're told that these people's dearest dream is to live outside ordered security. And I wanted just to quickly remind you guys that Dune represents an order to chaos perspective. And as opposed to, and if we think about that in terms of foundation, Asimov's foundation, it's the opposite. It's chaos to order. And we have, both books, Galactic Empire books, and there is a relationship, I suppose, between the Dune series and Foundation. I just wanted to have a wee look and see if the 5 for like systems in the back of the book here. I think we've talked about it before. So it's the rigid rule of class distinction enforced by the Imperium. A place for every man and every man in his place. So it's a feudal system where you're not. I suppose Gurney's going to be quite an interesting character in relation to this. A feudal system where you're not allowed, there's enforcement to leave your role in society. So this, I suppose we've had a lot of this over the years, going way, way back. But the idea is if your father's a carpenter, you will be a carpenter, your son will be a carpenter, you will stay within your class and your profession, And we get a lot of people, we get an awful lot of surnames like this because of this. People have surnames that are professions because they're passed down over the years, and it creates, ultimately, I suppose, you get generational skills out of it, but it also creates social immobility, which is exactly what any kind of monarchy wants, by the way, or any kind of any society that's set up to segregate anyone based on anything. That's what it wants, pretty much. I'm amazed that countries still have monarchies. I have to say, I'm absolutely profoundly gobsmacked by that, and I live in one. So I live in a country where there's a woman who believes that she has blood that's royal blood, and that she is a divine representative of the Abrahamic God on this earth, and her son, and her son will get her job, and etc. And all this stuff. And you shouldn't get me started on the British royal family, because they're an obscenity on every level, I have to say. I said Prince Andrew's all over the newspapers. Prince Charles not much further behind him half the time. They're extremely dodgy people. That's it. And that's what royal families are. And how do they get to be king or queen? It's generally by killing other people and then making up documents that say that God speaks for them, and this kind of thing, that they act on God's behalf. So there we go. A little bit of a rant there, but apologies. The Duke felt in this moment that his own dearest dream, here we go, this is what Leto's dream is, was to end all class distinctions and never again think of deadly order. That's really important, I think. To end all class distinctions. He's a fan of chaos, isn't he? Like myself. Chaos is a very interesting thing. And a lot of people don't understand it very well. You can look at it from, I suppose, a couple of different points of view. But mathematically, it's interesting, I have to say. If anybody's not particularly into their chaos, go check out some. There's some wonderful Mandelbrot sets on YouTube that I think that every time we're going along closer to the present, they're trying to push the envelope on how many iterations they can get. But I've sat and watched some of them, just been absolutely really enjoyed them. Not sure the Queen believes that, although her family are an expensive circus. Yeah, you can simply just ask how many, what's your family done over the years? How do you own all of this land? Where did you get all these jewels? Where does all your wealth come from? British Empire, and it is empire. And to be honest with you, the royal family's involvement in the military, and to be honest with you, to a degree, politics. They say that the Queen's not meant to be political. That's nonsense. And anybody who believes that's just daft. She's an awful lot of power, and because power comes from wealth, if you see what I mean. Oh, so just catching up. Earlier, Arrakis was traditional, small, easy to secure, contra to Carthage, which was cheap and brassy. Yeah, hang on a second. Just there, look something up. Yeah. Let me see. Our Berbers. There we go. Berbers indigenous to North Africa, specifically Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, and to a lesser extent Mauritania, northern Mali, and in northern Niger. Smaller Berber populations also found historically in Burkina Faso and Egypt's Siwa oasis. Berber languages, etc. Mythical origins. I was just like the barbarians there, I suppose. Just what you're thinking of, Carthage. Carthage is modern day Tunis, isn't it? That's an interesting little thing I was just thinking. Perhaps decadent desire to live outside the structures of class structure. Decadent compared to the surrounding desert. Just decadence, yeah. People with Garrison City. Decadent Garrison City could only see the Emperor's private note. I'm not. Yeah, I'd imagine that Arrakine's made up of a fair mix of people, wouldn't it? It's an interesting. Yeah, and how does he know it's decadent? I suppose it's maybe just in comparison to maybe the Fremen out, and that he knows that they're out there. The Barons Heist. Brad says the Barons Heist fell into ignominy. Sorry. This is the spur of the hatred between the two houses. The Barons' house had to rebuild through economics to get where they are now. Yeah, too much land locked in ancient families. Yeah, actually, a lot of farming land in Northern Ireland still controlled to a degree by certain types of families. It goes back to the plantations. So Catholic farms are generally smaller than Protestant ones. And more modern, I think, because of all that kind of land seized, etc. Chaos. Was it the Tommaso who was into all this? The Tommaso. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me. There he is. No, well, I've missed the Tommaso. I know who you're talking about. There's a chap called Di Tommaso who's written some stuff on Dune. Let me tell you what. Bear with me, and I'll find it for you. The chaos stuff. Actually, no, it's Donald E. Palumbo. There we go. Bear with me a wee second, and I'll just quickly. There we go. Pop that up. There we go. Find. Oh, we have. Okay, we've talked. Di Tommaso's stuff on Dune was history and historical effect in Frank Herbert's Dune. I have that as a 1992 publication. Let me just see I think that's published in History and Historical Effect in Frank Herbert's in Science Fiction Studies, Volume 9, 1992. That's where that was published. I think that El Del Tommaso is well involved. I don't know too much about him, but within the science fiction world, I think he's a science fiction academic. So, again, a lot of my information is quite old. The Chaos Theory, Asimov's Foundations and Robots, and Herbert's Dune, The Fractal Aesthetic of Epic Science Fiction. That's that book there. It's Donald E. Palumbo. That's a rather good book, actually. I have scribbled all over mine, I suppose. Well, back in the days of highlighting, but it's a very, very good. He talks about, just to show you this, I suppose, the self-similarity of Dune series architecture, trilogy within a trilogy within a trilogy. Sort of, he's looking for the pattern. If you see what I don't know if you can see that, okay. I'll maybe get a scan of some of this stuff for you at some point. So he's got the Dune series, the Atreides books, how he divides it up. Of course, he goes, there's 3 books in Dune, not 2. So the first 3 books in Dune, and Dune Messiah is another trilogy. The Atreides books, he looks at it. God Emperor separate, and the Bene Gesserit books. It's something that I kind of wanted to point out. I think I have done. That if you consider, I don't consider them trilogies. Well, I do, but I don't. I think they're overlapping. They're in pairs. I think if you consider the Dune series, and here's the way they work. It's Dune and Dune Messiah together. They're a pair, and I know they're part of a trilogy, but there's also a pair within that, and then that iterates into the next pair, which is Children of Dune and God Emperor Dune. and one of those is outside that, and then a different trilogy. And then those three with Heretic, I suppose, God Emperor of Dune with Heretics and Chapter House are also known as the second great Dune trilogy. But the last two books, the Bene Gesserit books, are together as well. So as much as there's a tripartite, if you like, a trilogy, separation and iteration within this idea of the chaos fractal, I'd actually argue that there's a number of duologies within that. And the books is essentially form duets, I think, if you like, if that's the right word. But yeah, and as I know that they're trilogies, but I think it's like an overlap, and that's kind of the reiterative of self repeating patterns, if you see what I mean. So how Herbert goes at chaos is interesting, and if any, I mean, that's a pretty good book. What do I want to do with it? Put it down somewhere. Mr. Palumbo's book on chaos theory in the Dune series. There we go. Chaos Theory, Asimov's Foundations and Robots, and Herbert's Dune. So this book is really, I don't know, I think this is quite possibly a PhD thesis. It looks like one that's been published. In other words, it's got sort of three sections, and it's pretty much around the same length. But the first part of this book is all about Asimov's Foundation series. The second part of it is all about Asimov's Robots series of novels. So it's only the third part of this book that focuses on Dune. So it plots within plots, patterns within patterns, chaos theory structures and concepts in the Dune series. The monomyth then as a fractal pattern in the Dune series. Excuse me. And the monomyth and chaos theory. Perhaps we should believe in magic. That's the three sections within this book. And interesting reading, and I don't agree with all it, to be honest with you. Still good stuff, but there you go. And it's a lot of thought put into it as usual. But yeah, that's Donald E. Palumbo's book. But yeah, I think there's a lot to do with chaos within the Dune series. So Leto's dearest dream is to get rid of class distinctions, to never again think of deadly order. That's bad thinking, isn't it? It's you can't really, the whole order. I'll have good, no evil. I'll have law, no chaos. This kind of thing. To me, that's bad thinking. Never again think of deadly order. So the idea that the order of the system that they've created is deadly, and based on possibly the epigraph that we've read tonight, has he misjudged the veracity of the madness of this universe? Because as much as if it's an emperor at the head, this idea of order and so on, it seems to be a very bad and violent place to be. And to be honest with you, it's one of those kind of things where if you're, it's one of those things we talk about, that if you're a slave in the Roman Empire, your life's pretty good, to be honest, providing you're not taking part in any kind of slave revolts, in which case things will not go well for you, I suppose. But your life's probably better, safer, easier than someone who lives outside the Roman Empire, if you see what I mean, who don't have roads, who don't have sanitation, the old Monty Python joke, what have the Romans ever done for us, this kind of thing. And even within the British Empire, which I live in a country that's still part of it, if you see what I mean. The empire has consequences, and it's how empires collapse are is quite interesting. The British Empire hasn't collapsed yet. It's well on its way, but it just really needs to die its death and become something new, I suppose. But the idea of, this is the United Kingdom, and of course Ireland is culturally so far removed from England, and always has been, that it's one of those things, I suppose. Not meaning to sidetrack, says Brad, but I found a book sitting on the front wall of my house. Dune, the Battle of Corn. Good stuff. College of Kells, thanks. Recursion. No worries. Let's see. Is that one of the Brian Herbert ones? Yeah. I've read a few of them, and I said I didn't mind them. I don't have I don't hate them or anything like that. I know there's a lot of vehemence towards them. I read was it Sandworms of Dune, Hunters? I was not impressed, but I was happy to. Oh, it's nice to finally read, I suppose, the story, and if it was based on Frank's notes, but I was not impressed by it, and especially coming from a classical background. Um, all the Deus Ex Machinas, I think I'm always very interested in how someone uses such a literary device. And I was a bit, oh, come on, but what the heck, you know? And then I read the first three books. I think was it the House Atreides, House Carino, House Harkonnen. I think was that it. And I thought they were fine enough. And I just really at that point, this is a franchise now, and it's not. It has ceased to be literature. It's so good luck to them, but I'm not going to waste my money. It's not. It's not how I read, and it's not. I don't want to read a series of books that are going to go on forever. I think I just keep milking it, and I think every time, as much as it's good that they could probably fill in wee details like that and give us a sense of what went on. I don't know. It's an off putter for me. I'd rather hit something new, you know, than stay in the same. You know, life's too short to keep reading the same stuff. You know. Something says the Duke's dearest dream is qualified by time. It's his dream at this moment. I think it's fleeting. I just don't see Leto leaving this dream in any other. Sorry, I don't. I just don't see Leto having this dream in any other thing. My opinion at the moment. Yeah, I suppose if we have a wee look at it, to end all class distinctions and never again think of deadly order. And again, off he looks up and out at the dust of the unwinking stars and thought, around one of those little light circles, Kalina. So his thoughts are pulled away. I suppose he's just kind of that's my dream, you know. And we get this longing for Caladan, and it's a sudden pain in his breast, as if it's the planet reaching out to him across the stars, you know. He could not bring himself to call this dry wasteland of Arrakis his home, and he doubted he ever would. I suppose to end all class distinctions, there's an interesting aspect to this, I suppose, in terms of how would Dune have ended if Frank Herbert had kept writing it. Something that we've been told is that, and I think this has come out that I must have a look into this and sort of see if I can verify this, that it's supposed to head towards a kind of democratic ending. What Leto's after here, an end to all class distinctions, etc., etc. Now that kind of does tie into the Atreides myth, and we've had a wee chat about that. If you have a look at the videos on the Pelopids, I suppose it's towards the conclusion of the spiral of violence. It's to do with the trial at Athens, and of course this is a play by let me see. This is a play by Aeschylus as the Oresteia. The first one's the Agamemnon, and the libation bearers, and the kindly ones, the Eumenides. So it's also kind of a foundation sort of myth in a way for democratic Athens, if you like, and it's fundamentally tied to the Atreides, or the Atreidai. So there we go. It's an interesting little. If that's what Leto's dream is, there is a connection to what we're told Frank Herbert wanted to end the seventh Dune book with. And funny enough, I think if that's how he wanted it, I don't really think that that's what was delivered. To be honest with you. I just had a thought about that one. Of course, you know, but who knows how he would have went with it. But certainly there have been lots of kind of, we've talked about occasionally looking at stuff around Dune, and we looked at Leto's father in the Dune Encyclopedia last week, I think it was, and he's Minotaurus, isn't he, or something like that. We were talking about the relationship between the Cretan myths, the Minoan myths, particularly what bulls represent, and this bull. Maybe just being bullheaded as well, you know. So yeah, it's his dearest dream is for democracy for all, I suppose. Yeah, I think it's interesting that he's come to this place. He can't bring himself to call Arrakis home, and he doubts that he ever will. And I kind of have to say, what does that say about him moving? You know. He must mask his feelings for the boy's sake. Again, that's a deception, isn't it? I must mask my feelings, he thought, for the boy's sake. If ever he's to have a home, this must be it. I may think of Arrakis as a hell. Sorry, as a hell I've reached before death, but he must find here that which will inspire him. There must be something. And, I thought it was interesting. If Paul's ever to have a home, this must be it. And the question I've asked here, guys, is what about Caladan? That was his home. Why couldn't that have been his home? And sometimes I sort of think that Leto comes across as an absentee father, sometimes prior to this. If you see what I mean, Paul, just in how he's presented about Paul always looking for him. And if that was the case, why didn't he just leave Paul and Jessica at home and off and go do this thing at Caladan? He might just, I don't know. The other wee thing I think I've mentioned here is that he makes the association. He thinks of Arrakis as a hell. As a hell I've reached before death. And I've just made a note that that's pretty much, isn't that very much a Christian idea? Just discussing hell. And hell pretty much in Christianity comes out of Hades, this kind of thing. So I thought that was an interesting how he thinks about it, I suppose. No such place as hell, of course. There was something quite interesting once upon. There is a place called hell. What am I talking about? And let me find out where it is for you. Let's see, this one by location. There we are. Not the real one. There we are. It's in Poland, isn't it? There we go. Hell is a seaside resort in Puck County, Pomeranian Voivodeship, Poland, located on the tip of the Hell Peninsula. Sorry. There we go. The Kashubian village of Hell was first mentioned in 1190. Just looking at Wikipedia. Something that was very funny, I read an article a long time ago. I think it was either the Independent or the Guardian newspaper. And they did a wee article. See if you can look this up. I enjoyed it enormously. It's when they sent, I think they sent a priest, a minister, and a rabbi to hell. And they could have went there as well, Michigan, USA. Well, that was it was a joke, but the idea was to get three members from the different Abrahamic religions, I suppose, and jokingly send them to hell, and it was to see how they got on, how they talked, and that kind of thing. Just a wee fun interview with, I suppose, different members of different clergies. But it stuck in my head. I thought that was quite a good one, But yeah, Bob says hell is also a city in Michigan, USA. And as an Ohioan, I endorse this thought. Excuse me. Very good. I don't know too much about Ohio, Babs. I have to say, I'll have to check it out. Have we knows? I don't really know much about America, too much. I know some stuff, I suppose, but my geography, I would say, is pretty poor. Let's see. So yeah, Leto's all out for democracy, etc. And he's feeling a bit homesick. And we get this, here we go, a wave of self-pity. Immediately despised and rejected, swept through him. And for some reason, he found himself recalling two lines from a poem Gurney Halleck often repeated: "My lungs taste the air of time blown past falling sands." Here we go, Gurney Halleck, poems again. I nearly wrote that was a couple, but it wasn't. And let me see. I suppose it's a pair of lines. So sorry, I've gone over the page there. I was trying to find my place there. The Gurney poem. I've written down it. I thought it was kind of Ozymandian, if that makes sense. My lungs taste the air of time blown past falling sands. Let me see. My lungs taste the air of time. Oh. My lungs taste the air of time. So. It's kind of in haiku form. If there was a third line, there would be there's what is it? My lungs taste the air of time. That's 7 syllables, blown past falling sands. There you go. There's well, that if there was another line to that and it had 7 syllables, we'd have a haiku. What was the one I used to do? Was it as a haiku for you, 17 syllables, very short. Oh, hang on, I have to think that. A haiku for you, 17 syllables. Make a short poem. There you go. A haiku for you, 17 syllables that make a short poem. A haiku about haikus. Sorry, I'm losing it here tonight, aren't I? I'll get back on track, folks. There we go. Ohio State and the University of Michigan are big-time rivals. Ohio, I'm thinking, is kind of, let me see, northwest. I don't know. Below, let me see, I'm trying to, what's the northwest would be Washington State, isn't it? It's Seattle. And then, would it be below, it's below, you're somewhere below Washington, I think. Oh, do you know what? I better have a look rather than me attempting any kind of American geography. Apologies to all Americans watching. American geography is not on the school curriculum. There we go. That's Ohio. Give me a USA map. Oh, I'm totally wrong. What am I thinking on? Goodness gracious, there you go, Babs. I can only apologize. I thought, what did I think Ohio was? Oh, you're not going to like this. I think it was probably Iowa. The one I was thinking on was Oregon. Sorry. You're nowhere near. You're on the wrong side of America. There you go. I really should have a look at some American geography, I suppose. The Great Lakes, and I kind of know where California and Miami are, and Washington State, I suppose. But that's it. I know where Texas is. But apologies. That's just appalling of me. Midwest, Middle Great Lakes. Yeah, the Great Lakes look nice, I have to say. So here we go. Yeah, another little, and I said a little bit Ozymandias, and I just thought, if you know the poem Ozymandias, by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and there's another poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley's mate. There's 2 poems called Ozymandias. It's kind of a poem competition between them, isn't it? But it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. So there we go. But as much as I was saying, maybe Herbert didn't do any kind of haiku work. If there was another line to that, it would be a haiku. So, Gurney's poem, plenty of falling sands here. Let's see. And we get a little bit more description, don't we, from him? The central wastelands beyond the moon-frosted cliffs was the desert, barren rock, dunes, blowing dust. And what does that say? Sorry, did I write the wrong thing down here? Let me just see. And oh, yes, I did write. An uncharted, dry wilderness. With here and there along its rim, and perhaps scattered through it, knots of Fremen. If anything could buy a future for the Atreides line, the Fremen might just do it. And again, if anything can buy a future for the Atreides line, it is the Fremen. A couple of wee things I suppose that's interesting about is that he, regardless of what's going on, I think there's actually a few things here, if we want to think about it. We talked about the silver coin of the moon, as opposed to looking at one of the moons with a hand or the mouse shadow. It's a coin. And here we have this, I'm going to buy a future. And there's often a monetary element and association, I think, with Leto. It's about finance. What's he doing here in the first place? Ultimately, I think it's greed. Yeah. It is, but money equates to power, and I suppose if he can get... So if his goal is really to create a democracy, is he going to try and put his own son on the throne through a political marriage? I don't know. It's not really clear. Not really clear at all, to be honest, how some of his ideas. But I think there's a sense of there's something venal maybe about him. Not in that sense. I think that's probably the wrong term. But money's a big association, I think, here. It's wealth. And of course, we're going to get this. So we get a little bit of geography there, linking up again to the and just this the scenery around us, and linking it into what I can get a future here. Buy a future for the Atreides line. That what that's him, I suppose, as well. And I've just put that that's the male, a male DNA. It's again another male-centric way of thinking, I suppose. The Atreides line is all about a male line, if you like, male to male to male. Of course, we know a wee bit about DNA and stuff. It's a bit different, I suppose, isn't it, in terms of how we consider how genetics is passed. I've made a wee note here. He's relying on an unknown, isn't he? If anything can buy a future for the Atreides line, the Fremen might just do it. We don't know the Fremen yet, and it's, I suppose, buy a future. Can they be bought? This kind of idea, but he's basing his future on an unknown, and I've written that that's stupid. But maybe that's part of Leto's thing. Is Leto a bit chaotic, even within the limitations? I don't know. There's that kind of bit half and half in some ways, I think. I'm not too sure. And that we get the third interruption here. Once again, they have tried to take the life of my son with an exclamation mark. That's number 3. And we get this, again, sound that interrupts. A lot of this, quite a common thing with Frank here. He uses sound just to break off either the actions or the thought process. And here we have a bunch of blast shutters going down, scraping metal racket, which blocks his view. And I suppose we have a shuttle arriving, and it's time for him to go to work. So this noise sort of activates a wee bit of action coming down. The shuttle's arriving, blast doors, this kind of thing. I better go in. Time to get to work. And off he goes, and again with another staircase, as opposed to Jessica ascending her staircase to the little weirding room, or what do we call it, Wet Planet Conservatory, or pleasure room, depending on what we want to call it. Here's Leto descending, and I think because we have that same imagery in the chapter, stairs, and one is an ascent and the other is a descent. Is it Anabasis and Catabasis, isn't it? Catabasis. There we go. So if you ever want to take a walk into hell for a heavenly cause, you're having a catabasis, if you like. So catabasis is the opposite of anabasis. Anabasis, I think, in Greek means a march up country, to march up, and catabasis therefore is a march down. And I think did somebody point out once that I think Xenophon's anabasis, which you might know as God, what would you call the Anabasis, I suppose? The Anabasis is known as the Persian expedition. Sorry, I was trying to think what's its kind of regular name. And I think as much as it's an example of an Anabasis, I think it is actually a catabasis. But there we go. A hero descending into the underworld is also in that sense. But just a wee observation, I thought. He's descending while Jessica ascended. And I suppose metal, this kind of thing, she went into something that was lush and full of life, and he's heading down into the barracks, I think, isn't it? Or the big assembly room. There we go. So he's trying to remain calm. Again, this thought keeps the consistency of it. It's the same phrase every time. We're getting this reiteration constantly. They've tried to take the life of my son, impacting that on us, I suppose. And it comes again. As much as I'm trying to remain calm, prepare my face for the coming encounter, I've tried it, and it's a shout once again. That's our 4th one we've heard. Excuse me. And I think we get another really interesting thing here. I thought this is, as far as I can see it, the men were already boiling in from the field when he reached the yellow domed room. And I was wondering, does boiling have another meaning that I'm not aware of? And it doesn't. So it's just that use of a word, I suppose, to give it, I suppose, a sense of frenetic activity and heat, maybe. But I did have a wee look. I wondered, does boiling mean something else other than what I know? And they're carrying their space bags over their shoulders, shouting and roistering like returning students from a vacation. We get a little bit of. I thought this bit was interesting, guys. Don't know what you think. A little bit of banter from the Atreides men, and it's really to do with Arrakis, isn't it? Feel that under your dogs. That's gravity, man. How many G's does this place pull? Feels heavy. 9/10 of a G by the book. So we have Arrakis has 9/10 gravity of whatever's considered standard. And I suppose I kind of asked the question there. I wondered just maybe think of it. It feels heavy. Is that because they've been in space or because they're from Caladan? And I kind of wondered if it's Caladan. Why haven't we heard of this from any of the other characters? So I'm assuming the Earth feels heavy because they've been in space. But it just kind of made me wonder, what was the standard for gravity? Is it Earth, which is a mystery to us in this book, or is it from some other planet? I suppose. But I think we should just assume that it is 9/10 standard of Earth's gravity. And I suppose the question then becomes, I wonder what Caladan's gravity was. How big of a change is this? Crossfire of throne words filled the big room. Again, just that language that we're getting here. This whole where's all the loot? Harkonnens took it. This kind of thing. And again, a little bit more about the men, I suppose, just through banter, talking about getting hot showers and soft beds. Don't be stupid. This kind of thing. There are no showers here. You scrub your ass with sand. And of course, this crossfire of language that's going about between all the men, a bit of banter, and of course they see Canet, that's the Duke, and of course as he enters the room, is suddenly silent. And I'll just put a nice little bit of alliteration and sibilance there, and we get Gurney arriving. So if you ready to have a wee look at Gurney Halleck, if you'd excuse me, folks, I'm going to nip to the loo very quickly and just take a wee brief intermission, and we'll be right back. Sorry about this. Excuse me for a couple. Sorry about that, folks. Oh, that's better. I had a bit of a crazy night tonight. I just brought the just while I was out there, I was grabbing this for you. This is the archetypes of the collective unconscious. Carl Gustav Jung. This is from the Bollingen series published by Princeton. Just to read this to you, I suppose these paperback editions of Carl Jung's writings are selected from the collected works translated by RFC Hull and originally published as Bollingen's Series 20. Present paperback contains Volume 9, Part 1, from the 2nd edition, 1968, complete and unabridged, is what this is. So there's obviously quite a lot of Jung stuff. Not something I would get into too much, but there's for example, the psychological aspects of the core. Don't even get me started on this kind of stuff. But I suppose if you've been with us long enough, you know what I think of this kind of stuff. But just in relation to how Herbert sort of shades, sets up his characters, his action, etc. If you have a look at some of these, you'll probably get the idea, and also, the sense of the worm here. So these are some of these Jungian Mandalas. And if you like, if you bear with me a wee second or two, what I'll actually do is I'll get you the quotation by Frank about how he uses these, and especially in relation to Dune. If you think about, and also that the map of Arrakis is a mandala. You'll see your worms and stuff. All of this kind of thing. If you see what I mean about opposites and how Herbert says he uses these to kind of put up, oppose characters, etc. Scenery, all sorts of things. And again, just it's just a wee selection of these things. You can check out a lot of them online. And I think there's a whole sort of bunch of these. There's not all of them in color, but this, as I said, this is from the book on. Thanks very much, love. The book on the collective archetypes of the Jungian archetypes of the collective unconscious. Sorry, and again, so Jung is a major influence on Frank Herbert for all sorts of reasons, but he actively uses it in his writing. There you go. There's your Ouroboros and all of this kind of stuff. It's quite interesting. From I suppose if you look at it this from a psychological point of view, it's one thing. If you look at them from a mythological point of view, mythography point of view, it's entirely another. But yeah, it's I suppose it's interesting. But there you go. Excuse me. There's Channel Mal. Hello, lovely to catch you again, Doc. Standard gravity. Is it ever mentioned or implied that the Fremen warriors find other planets heavy or themselves weightier on other worlds? I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a good question, Channel Mal. Channel Mal says, hello, all. Well, gosh, the crowds of watchers are diminished now the movie's out. Hey, I haven't been in here since just after the release. Not to worry, Channel. Okay, we're quite sort of small and low key, and I had literally had to pop out and go to the loo there. But this is a wee book club, and it's low key and I suppose intimate, but we never had that many viewers in the first place, Channel Mal. I think you're remembering incorrectly, but the more the merrier. Thanks for coming back. We're working at a wee Dune Book Club at the minute here, and we're doing our science fiction Fridays as well, and working away on a new episode, hopefully very, very soon. A few things for next week or the week after. Don't like to give dates at the minute because just life's being a bit busy. But there we go. But no, I suppose the interesting thing from what you're saying is that the Fremen are the people of Mizir, and that they have migrated from several different planets over the years. So arguably, in terms of Fremen migration, they've lived on worlds with different gravities. Either that, or we can maybe assume that there has to be, if you're going to live on a habitable world, that it would have to have a certain, with a certain reasonable range of gravity, or else, just like Arrakis, you're not going to leave it, are you? That's an interesting thing. I suppose it's part of the expanse, isn't it? People who on different gravities, how they might deal with having to move from planet to planet. And if you live permanently in vacuum, that kind of thing, you might not be able to come home to anywhere. Cosette says, I'm here just catching up. I'm a couple of chapters behind, but I come by to give my thumbs up and say hello to everybody. Hi, Cosette. We're only doing a couple a week. Actually, they're quite quick to read through. They're not very. I think the average chapter is about 6 or 7 pages, maybe 7 or 8, maybe. So that takes me it takes me about an hour to annotate a page. So there you go. Excuse me. More shameless promotion required. I'm not very good at that, to be honest with you. Colleges and cannibals. I'm not as much as I put up things on Twitter and stuff. It's just to let people know, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm not really. I don't know. I probably don't have the time to do it, but I'm not. I try to get people to sort of notice some of the work that we've done, but it's there, and we just keep working. So I want to get some new videos done. I suppose that's the thing. I explored this kind of live broadcasting, and I am enjoying it enormously. And it kind of makes me think a wee bit of like doing a radio show, this kind of thing. But we're doing it with a book, and again, people can read the book, they can listen to the book, they can, they can watch the movies or the TV shows. How they absorb it's entirely up to them, I suppose. But it's all good fun, and yeah, we're put it this way. We've always been low key, and we're quite casual, and I suppose I don't know. Well, that's the way I look at it anyway. It's pretty low key, casual, cheap, cheap as chips, as they would say. We're not on the cutting edge of production budgets or anything like that here. But I do enjoy this and the interactions that we have a good crowd here. Good people who interact in a good way, and I think it's great. The more the merrier. But to be honest with you, you wouldn't be able to do this with an awful lot of people. I wouldn't be able to manage it on my own. Not being able to respond like this, where I can actually try and answer everybody's questions. And it's the same with whenever I get comments in the videos. I think occasionally YouTube hides comments from you in a funny way. That you go, when did that appear? You can't actually reply to them don't ask me. I have no idea why. But yeah, it's good to have a nice little crowd, I suppose. I'm used to playing gigs as a musician, and I've been a lecturer, and I've done all sorts of things. My rule for playing gigs is as long as there's 3 people, I play. It's as simple as that. And if there's only 2 people, I'll probably just sit down and strum with them. But back in the days of having a full band, though, if there were 3 people in the room, we'll play. That's our work ethic, I suppose. But just because we wanted to play, But so I'm not too bothered about it. But if anybody wants to spread the word or something like that, But I think we're on some of my videos. I think are a bit much for. They're a bit heavy. Saying that, guys, I suppose I post my stuff up as educational. The way it's been, YouTube has now added a whole range of different, I suppose, educational categories that you can now define your work by. And I've tried to keep it kind of. I always thought it was educational and a bit of entertainment, but I'm absolutely not allowed to pick both. So now that's edutainment is my new neologism. There we go. That I've learned. So that how we can maybe present this stuff, but it's also to do with how it's found as well. I've done I have another account for my tutoring on. It's just a Gmail and tutoring account, YouTube thing. And I've actually searched for my videos and not found them. So you get an awful lot of certain people's videos and not much of anything else really. So, and I put that down probably to the YouTube algorithm, which is so I should be telling you all to subscribe and like and do all this, and I really couldn't be bothered wasting my time and your time. I think if you like the show, a station, that's what I do. I'd subscribe to it, and if there's a new episode, I'll go watch it. But I'm not very good at shameless self promotion, as you put it. Regarding viewers, I know it felt like 16 was quite a crowd. Yeah, that's all good, I think. But so we do get. It's not just me talking here. I suppose there's good interaction here, and I really like that. But if there was, I've seen other channels where this live chat here is just going like that, and it would be impossible to actually talk and keep up and read your call. I'd need people to do it, and that wouldn't happen. So there you go. Let's see. Is the gravity a literary metaphor for the Get Your PhD podcast? I thought if I did it, actually, probably want to record the sound again if it was just audio only. But yeah, I've got no podcasts or nothing. Yeah, I don't know. Looking into it, but never enough time and not enough arms, guys. The other thing is I'm a bit of a mess in terms of injuries and stuff like that. But one of my problems is both my shoulders are in a bit of a state, and I'm having a bit of a hard time typing at the minute. So I'm considering getting some voice, especially when we've got this big microphone here, some voice talk type software if possible. Might help me a bit, but But I don't like to rely on tech that much, to be honest. Is the gravity a literary metaphor for the Atreides? Something that leads them to think it'll be lighter or easier than it turns out to be? Not sure. I think they're just the usual banter here of just soldiers on the move. I think it's just one of those wee ways that we're also going to get a little bit mention of water discipline, that kind of thing here. But I don't know. That's kind of I was wondering about it. Channel Mao, that just in terms of that, but I thought that's why I asked. I put a wee question. Wonder what it would depend on what Caladan's gravity's like, and I don't think I'm too sure. Tell you what, let's have a wee. I wonder if I wonder if Professor McNally can answer that question for us. Possibly not, but not that it's considered canon by the Herbert estate, but we don't really care about that, do we? Let me see. Caladan. Oh, I love this book. If you're a Dune fan, this is great. Just looking at Caladan wines here. You'll pick out a cheeky little number for later. Let me see. Caladan wines, Caladan education, standard imperial. 3-6. That's its calendar. And again, this is all fan fiction stuff, I suppose. Yeah, it doesn't really give us anything there, I suppose. And it's just, I think it's maybe just one of those details. That it's a light gravity planet, I suppose. It's not. It's just close to standard, I suppose. Excuse me. Let's catch up. Cosette saying, I can easily read the book, Doc. I'm so excited to hear from everyone else and you. Excellent. Cosette, yeah, great to have you all here, folks. I really do enjoy it. I said it is fun. Channel Mama says, low key, casual, and cheap is the slogan for the internet circa 1995 to 2000, and we all miss it. The internet's a changed place, isn't it? The World Wide Web. You'd be surprised how educated the YouTube audience can be. I totally agree. I mean, I watch YouTube, I don't know. I've got comments back, so I don't like to think of my stuff as highbrow. I like to think of it as accessible. But I've had comments, I suppose. So I do pay attention. They've not all been nice, but some of them have been, a reasonable attempt at criticism. And some people have thought that it was a bit highbrow, but I did point out that a lot of that stuff's a PhD. So, but I think it's a perception, if you know what I mean. That if a PhD is meant to be understandable by anyone, and the idea of it maybe frightens some people, particularly a younger audience, I think. I think that there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube. Most of it's made by its content creators, and a lot of this stuff, I absolutely agree that I think it's a very well educated, very intelligent. Don't always equate education with intelligence, but if you know, it's an intelligent audience. Because that says, I read this series of books in my early 20s after much upheaval in life, growing up, murders, death, and secret in my family spilling out all over the place. The people in Dune made my life seem great. I can relate to that, Cosette. I started in my mid-20s, and I don't know. My early life is a kind of death, doom, and destruction kind of. It's just chaos. Yeah. Goodness, you sound like you've had an interesting life to Cosette, and as I always point out, that's not, and was it it's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I use the word a lot. The people in June made my life seem great. As I've pointed out there recently, there Cosette, whenever we were doing the videos on the Pelopids, I was saying, this ancient Greek slaughter fest that is nothing, absolutely nothing. It might as well be Tinky Winky and this kind of thing compared to where I live. Which is an incredibly sad statement to make in the 21st century, that your own people are more violent and barbaric than the ancient Greeks, and the really mad ancient Greeks. I don't know why I call them my own people. They're not. I just like to think of myself as a culture of one. But there we go. The people in June made my life seem great. YouTube or anyone separates education from entertainment is a sad time. I agree. I think they should be fundamentally linked. And if you can't, essentially, what the best teachers are entertainers. If the more entertaining you can make the thing that you have to teach, the better. The more people are into it. As much as we're annotating this, really just talking about it, taking it apart. It's good fun. Back to what you were saying about traps earlier. These boisterous men do not yet feel or sense the trap of Arrakis. At the end of the chaotic meeting with Duke, the men will be somber, sensing the trap. Well, they're going to go where they're told anyway, because that's what a soldier does. Colleges and campuses, people perhaps mistake your channel for something like Film Comics Explained, coming to you after seeing the latest flick. Oh, yeah, I don't really know. We've got about, I don't know. I suppose it's a global audience, isn't it? And we've got a good few subscribers and so on. We get people watching, I suppose, just with the different time zones, but we've people who watch from all over the world, which is something that I really like. Probably the one thing I miss about living in, well, I don't miss living in London, I suppose I should put it that way. But what I did miss about living in London was, or what I did miss about London was that it was a big cultural melting pot. You can meet people from all over the place just by walking, and and I really like that kind of thing, I have to say, but I don't know. I think it's a thing of itself, to be honest, and I keep calling this station an odd little thing, because I think it's odd, and but yeah, I'm here to have a bit of fun and hopefully educate people, and I like to consider myself as a highly wasted resource on pretty much everybody here. So I'm doing what I kind of want to do, and it's good fun, and and I'm learning plenty by doing it. As I said, that my biggest problem we've talked about, guys, is not that there's so much to choose from here in the science fiction world, and that I've happily opened up to horror, fantasy. I mean, genre fiction, horror, fantasy, this kind of stuff. I love it all. My expertise is in science fiction, and it's the same as classical studies. It's an enormous field. You can't read it all. You'll never will. And so it's great to get people who are engaged with it in many different ways, And for me, the last few years in particular, since Ian Banks died, I've been hunting science fiction that's culturally different. If you see what I mean, I want to see stuff by, that's out there. I want to explore that a bit more. But science fiction has given a lot of that to me, I suppose, over the years. And Dune's another book that does that. And what a way to explore many cultures, but through a science fiction book, Branagh's Belfast might appeal to you if you miss London's multiculturalism. I don't know. Belfast doesn't appeal to me in very few. Belfast doesn't really appeal to me on many levels at all. But there's a couple of things I like about Belfast, and that's it's a hard hit. If you know what I mean, we're done. I wonder what it's like. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? Colleges Belfast. I was jokingly saying that we're not seeing much Middle Eastern representation in the casting of that film the other day, if you see what I mean. We joke about it, where's the diversity in Belfast of the 1960s, I assume, just before the Troubles kick off, I think. Really kick off. I'm looking forward to see it, actually. And I'd imagine the one thing about people in Northern Ireland, I dare say, well, most of the people will go out to see it. They'll support a film like that. Well, there's not much else. Saying that, there's very little else about London to like. I have to say, if you want your water filtered through 11 people before you take a drink, it's especially when you're used to Irish spring water, that kind of thing, And I don't mean from a bottle. Excuse me, Doc. You're like a combo of John Peel. Oh well, that's nice to be mentioned in that kind of company. Pirate Radio, Caroline, and Max Headroom, but with you a lot more science fiction. Thank you very much. I am a creature of the old days of pirate radio, and yeah, not seen it but heard several reviews. Yeah, I don't think I'd go to the cinema to see it, to be honest. I'd rather watch it at home. But Kenneth Branagh is a consistent. He's a Belfast boy, as I'm sure you've all just figured out. But is again away we get a lot of people who leave and then come back and do their stories, if you see what I mean. And they're often a particular way of looking at Northern Ireland. So I'm kind of interested to see. I think it's a family drama that I find. I'd like to see it. I'm curious to see it and to see what level of brutality there is in it, if you know what I mean. Or what level of Northern Ireland's evil pops up in it. Or is it just a nice family drama? But yeah, I think it's pretty much about them getting out, isn't it? And yeah, most of I suppose our Hollywood types, if you want to call them that, whenever they get out, they don't come back, but they often like to comment about, I think somebody from California got one of our roads shut last year over COVID. Seriously, Americans are phoning up and telling us what to do. But they'll talk a certain way about Northern Ireland, but depending on if they have family here or not, then they'll stop. It's as simple as that. So you won't hear Liam Neeson talking too much trash, if you see what I mean, because he's family here and they would be at risk. It's as simple as that, I think. Liam Neeson he advocates for integrated education. You see, so I suppose him and his James Nesbitt, I suppose, are good friends, but they're kind of one's Catholic, one's Protestant, this kind of thing. And the idea that integrated education is a good thing in Northern Ireland. It's better than religious education, but it's just putting the two religions together in one class. I think religion needs to get out of the classroom in this country badly, and it's a major part of control by the political parties. They want Jesus in the classroom, and they want those kids scared as quickly as humanly possible. But there we go. Not seen it but heard something, but they do have an Irish president there. They do. Anyway, God, get me away from Northern Ireland, folks. But in fact, there'll be a few things here we might actually talk about tonight, so it might resurface. But let's have a wee look. We've got Gurney Halleck, and I think we talked a wee bit earlier that a lot of the characters, we've got good introductions, good descriptions of them. We didn't get one of Gurney. Because here it comes, I suppose, and we're going to get Leto's point of view, Leto's observations of Gurney. But the fact that we're getting a good bit of description of him here is because we didn't get it previously. Just a bit of a warrior troubadour, and he's got a scar. That was about it, if you excuse me. I'm all chuffed with that being not only being compared to John Peel, but to Max Headroom as well. I think that's great. Thank you very much, guys. That was sarcasm, of course. Right, so here we go. At the point of the crowd is Gurney Halleck. He's got his gear bag in one hand and a 9-string balisette in the other. And interestingly enough, I think this is how's Gurney described here, and it's Leto's description, isn't it? Where are we? He strode along at the point of the crowd, bag over one shoulder, the neck of his 9-string balisette clutched in the other hand. There were long-fingered hands, with big thumbs, full of tiny movements that drew such delicate music from the balisette. Now, the Duke watched Halleck. Here we go, admiring the ugly lump of a man, noting the glass splinter eyes with their gleam of savage understanding. Here was a man who lived outside the Pfeiffer-like system while obeying their every precept. What was it Paul called him? Gurney the Valorous. There we go. And we've a wee bit more, just quickly. Excuse me, we'll get through this description. He has wispy blonde hair that trails across barren spots on his head. He has a wide mouth with that's twisted into a pleasant sneer. And the scar of the ink vine whip slashed across his jawline seemed to move with a life of its own. His whole air was of casual, shoulder-set capability. He came up to the Duke and bowed. So there we go, there's Gurney. I think some of this is quite interesting. Long-fingered hands and big thumbs. You know, I always thought that the whole Donald Trump thing with I got tiny, the whole hands thing. I've got small hands and I'm an excellent musician. So, and small hands are as good as large ones, I suppose. It depends on your instrument. But you'll see a lot of guitar players with quite, let me see, I suppose quite large hands, long hands. But it's not a prerequisite. On a full-size guitar, you can probably see how small my hands are, actually. There we go. But it's, I don't know if it's that idea that you must have big hands to be a musician. I thought it's one of those fallacies, I suppose. But I also thought the whole thing with Donald Trump and the size of his hands is hilarious. Oh dear. Holly, have you dropped one, love? I think you have. What have you been eating? Oh dear. I've got just one of the dogs here, and Holly's in the doghouse with me, but she's just dropped a stinker of a fart. I was about to light my cigarette. Maybe I shouldn't risk it. What do you think, Holly? Oh, it's bad. Oh, goodness gracious. Right. Sorry, folks. Just a wee point of order. I thought long-fingered hands, big thumbs, full of tiny movements that drew such delicate music. Trying to set up a sort of series of contradictions, I think, about Gurney Halleck here. Leto admires him. His admiration, this description of an ugly lump of a man. This is the Duke. You watched him admiring the ugly lump of a man. Glass splinter eyes, gleam of savage understanding. And I actually think, I wonder what that means. Now, something really important here. Here, and after what we've just heard about the Emperor, and that we've talked about the Emperor's opinion of the Five-for-like system, here's Gurney. Here was a man who lived outside the Five-for-likes, okay, whilst obeying their every precept. And I've written, what the hell does that mean? And then he go, what is it Paul calls him? Gurney the Valorous. But seriously, what does that mean? And interestingly, I suppose, I've called that paradoxical. I've written paradoxical, and I've written down, what exactly does that mean? And I think it's a strange one. And we know, for those of us who know the book, I suppose we know a wee bit about Gurney Halleck. But I'm coming from a slave pit, isn't it, or something like that? So he's considered one of two things, isn't he? And he's either a fighter or stroke troubadour, which is a particularly interesting it's particularly interesting turn of phrase. What was that? The sarcasm. I know you get those references, not sarcasm, a bit cheeky, I suppose, but all compliments fully intended. Not at all. Don't worry. I think they're good references. Radio, yeah. Max Headroom. I love Max Headroom back in the day. And yeah, John Peel, Radio Pirate was it Radio Caroline? I'll tell you, particularly one of my real strong favourites from that era, Channel Mall, is Kenny Everett. And I don't know if you know who we mean. Who I mean. Kenny Everett would have been. Was he on? He's one of their DJs. He was absolutely brilliant, and ended up with a TV show, quite a saucy TV show on British TV, the Kenny Everett television show. We're going back to the early 80s. And he was just amazing. He's got a bit of science fiction to him as well, and a bit of horror. But there's one of his films, I think, is it Murder at the Bloodbath at the House, Murder at the Bloodbath of Death, or something like that. So if you look up Kenny Everett filmography, he didn't do really too many films. I think it's on Amazon or Netflix at the minute. It's really stupid. maybe it's a Hammer horror film. Vincent Price is in it. But yeah, Kenny Everett did. There's a science fiction connection there, guys. Captain Kremen. Let me see if I'll just. I think it's. If you haven't seen any Captain Kremen, I love Captain Kremen. Yeah, you can find Captain Kremen all over the web. By the way, you should see him on YouTube. And there we go. I'll just type it in for you. Kenny Everett appears in 2000 AD. By the way, he's drawn in 2000 AD as a radio DJ, and I think he's in the very, very. It's either the very first or the very second ever Nemesis the Warlock story. Is it Going Underground or Tube? Let me see. Hang on a second. Where would you be? Where is he? Nemesis the Warlock, book 1. There it is. Does it have it? Yeah. Goodness gracious. Right, what do you see? Just the Radio Caroline thing. Bloodbath at the House of Death. Thank you. That's brilliant, by the way. Not to worry. We'll get back to the book real fast. Don't worry about it. We're always getting... There's so many connections. Just to show you, this Terror Tube is the very first ever Kenny Everett. There's Nemesis the Warlock. There he is. Doing his DJ, but absolutely brilliant. So there's a connection between Kenny Everett, Radio Caroline, 2000 AD. There's a comic, a kind of cartoon comic called Captain Kremen, which is Kenny Everett, which is a brilliant, really funny. Gosh, Carla, this kind of, and it's all him. And 2000 AD has a kind of their version of it, and he's drawn like Kenny Everett. It's called Captain Klep, and if you can check him out as well, Captain Klep's quite saucy. God, we're going back a long time, but there you go. Going Underground, absolutely, is the second one there, and it's we're going underground, isn't it? It was Killer What? Yeah. Well, how were these were presented as, oddly enough, and then they became Nemesis. They're like preludes to Nemesis. Comic Rock. So the first one, Terror Tube. The very first panel. Let me see. I don't want to open this one too. It's an old one. Let me see. Up here you can see it says it's suggested by the Jams Going Underground. There you go. And Nemesis is a beautiful. Love Nemesis. Part 2. What was it based on? I thought each of them was based on a Killer What, suggested by the album Killer Watts. There you go. And then once those 2 stories are done, you're into Nemesis the Warlock. Properly. God, we're going back to July 1981 there, which is it's a very interesting sort of exploration. It's kind of like I don't know. It's like the bad guy Torquemada is like Hitler and Torquemada and all of these bad guys in one. He's a great comic book villain. I think he was voted best comic villain for something like 10 years in a row. But there you go. Yeah. Little connections. I'd absolutely love to do some stuff on Captain Kremen and Captain Klep, and I'll link that to Flash Gordon and then link that to Flash Gordon as well. I'm afraid there's a little. There you go. But yeah, thumbs up, Kenny Everett's The Bloodbath at the House of Death. Sorry for joining it. If anyone hasn't seen it, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix or Amazon. It's on one of them. Bloodbath at the House of Death. Very funny. Just stupid. Really good laugh. I have to say, love films like that. There we go. So yeah, we've got Gurney, and as I said, this sort of, he's a savage understanding. And I suppose the one thing I kind of wondered was, okay, if Gurney is outside of the 5 for like system, yet within it, what does that mean? And he's been described as a fighter, troubadour, slave fighter, pit fighter, possibly this kind of thing. I did a wee quick note on troubadours and how do we nosy at that. They're pretty interesting, and you can check some stuff out on Wikipedia. Will lead you to all sorts of things. Troubadours, very specifically, composers and performers of old Occitan lyric poetry, and this is how he's described as well. Occitan's like a romance language. It's an older regional one. How would you put it? Where's Occitan? Southern France, kind of around Monaco, that part of Italy. I think, and there's the Occitan Valley or something like that. Bits of Spain, I think. Yeah, have we nosy at troubadours, if you like, if you're into that kind of thing. Various types of professions, I think it's bards and so on. But a troubadour is sometimes considered to be what's the word? How would we put it? Like a poor knight. I suppose someone who's a wealthy and a person of either landed gentry or something like that who's lost their landers on hard times and has taken up this kind of thing. But yeah, very interesting. Of course, we get Paul calls him Gurney the Valorous. From valor, to be strong. Now, I've just, pardon me, put a wee note about Inkvine here, and I've drawn down to a wee note because I'd forgot to scribble it down. So we're told that if we go to the terminology of the Imperium, that the Inkvine is where are we? Inkvine is a creeping plant native to Giri Prime and frequently used as a whip in the slave cribs. Victims are marked by beet-coloured tattoos that cause residual pain for many years. There we go. So this is one of these. I just thought something in it. Slave cribs suggests children, doesn't it? And another association with the Baron. So I'm not too sure if it sounds like Gurney Halleck has been a slave, brought up on Giri Prime as a slave, etc., or been captured and made into a slave. I think he's a native of Giri Prime. Sadly declined when Torquemada became a tar block landlord. When was that? I don't know. Torquemada's insane. I love him. There's the bit where he sends all those people to their death, and I will meditate on your death sometime. And he's off. It's just the fact that he doesn't give a shit. I mean, I think Nemesis the Warlock is just the kind of about that insane fixity of destroying the alien, isn't it? And the whole point is that Nemesis looks like the devil and is pretty much the devil, and defends all aliens. It's kind of that, how people look at all. I don't know. It's a very interesting story how we look at the alien, and of course the only true monsters in Nemesis the Warlock are the humans, aren't they? But I tell you what, wouldn't that be an amazing science fiction show if you could do Nemesis the Warlock? If someone put the money up, I'd write it, and I'd do it. I'd put my name to it. I'd have a go at it. There are moments. Yeah, there's the fourth book, I think, and it goes very steampunk, and Brian Talbot's involved, and then in come the ABC Warriors, and we get that wonderful is it the time tombs as the ABC Warriors and Nemesis teamed up, and then it comes out, and I'm a wee bit, I don't know. I haven't been near 2018 in a long time, but I remember getting through the end of it. I think there's 10 books. I've only got the first 4 colleges and Campbells, and I think they're very well self-contained, actually. But I do love them, and there's something about the artwork that is incredible in Nemesis the Warlock, and I've been doodling like that for years, and the whole Credo thing, and if anybody really hasn't checked out the artwork in the Nemesis, I'm sure there's modern versions of them. Exquisite. And you see, if somebody colorized this, they could go to hell. They really can. This should never be colorized. All of it's very gothic. It's atmosphere. The artwork is sublime. It's so good, and it's so weird. Who have we got here? Well, I don't know. Who are we talking about in some of these? Well, yeah, Kevin O'Neill. Kevin O'Neill and I'd say Ian Gibson. Pretty much two of my favorite 2000 AD artists there. Yeah, I guess the part where they're being described as brotherhood. Sorry, I know we're flipping off topic there, folks, a wee bit, but I wasn't too sure what one you were talking about there. Colleges. Torquemada keep kind of as a phantom, so he keeps inhabiting other people's bodies. So he's kind of one of those perpetually returning villains, if you see what I mean. So yeah, slave cribs, etc. And if that's the case, where we talked about the association with Laius and the Baron, and particularly, I suppose, those kind of military child cults in Thebes that are associated with him, that we've had a wee bit of a mention before. So yeah, we get plenty of description about Gurney there, and we're told, he's got a casual air about him, with his shoulder set capability. And he's arrived with the last set of the troops. Let me see, just I find my wee note here. Yes, I mean, he preferred to have been there with the first wave. Leto says there's still some Harkonnens for you. Step aside with me. We're going to have a wee chat. Right. Let's talk, basically. Quite interesting. Just a little aside of a thing here. They stop in a wee alcove, and what's there but a coin-operated slot machine for water. And I just very casually mentioned there, they moved into an alcove beside a coin slot water machine, while the men stirred restlessly in the big room. So suppose that somebody could tell the soldier that he can have a shower if he's got enough coins for enough water. I suppose, save your coins. Book 9, must be well into it by then. Art by John Hickleton. See, but I suppose that all the rest of them colleges I read throughout when I was reading the comics, and the only ones that I actually have on in book form are the 4 that I have. And yeah, you're right near the end there. I'd like to get them actually to read them again. I wonder, is there a collected thing? But the first 4 books of Nemesis are comic book heaven for me. If you can get again, there's the size of these ones. They're the old Titan books, which are great. But Nemesis the Warlock, the Blitz Spear is the ship. Excessus is his sword. And if you get long enough into it, Nemesis is Deadlock. They're the same individual. And he's the devil. He's the Lord of the Flies. Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, probably by the end. It kind of probably should have had died a little bit of a death a bit before that. But it's one of those kind of reiterative things where the hero and the villain keep bouncing off each other. He was such a great villain anyway. I haven't nothing new by Torquemada probably in a long time, I suppose, But by God, I thought he was a really bad, really evil guy. He was very funny. Just quite flippant, I think, And then there's the whole Torquemada family. We better get back on here, folks. Let's see. So Leto and Gurney are going to have this wee discussion. And it's more about how many men can you let Howard have? And Gurney's immediate response is Thufir in trouble? I suppose he's just landed, so he doesn't really know what's going on. But we're told that Thufir has lost 2 agents, and that his advanced men have given us an excellent line on the Harkonnen setup. And here we go. This is the key to the Atreides strategy. I think it's the big if, isn't it? Where are we? If we move fast. So just to give you the full quote, if we move fast, we may gain a measure of security, the breathing space we require. He wants as many men as you can spare, men who won't balk at a little knife work. And Gurney's going to give him 300 men. So, again, we have another. So it's just a bit of discussion here. How was I putting this? These guys are going to go out and do a bit of stabbing, aren't they? That's what I got the sense of it, and it almost occurred to me that this is kind of is this Leto's night of the long knives? If you see what I mean. Not in a political context, but is he just going out? His son's been killed, and he wants 300 men for knife work for Howard, and he's angry. But the key, rage becoming anger is, I suppose, the thing. We must get security. Okay, this is it. It's all about getting breathing space. Let me see. Breathing space that which we require. I've just lost my note here. Oh yeah, sorry, I've written it down next to the wrong note. We begin a measure of security, not security, but a measure of it, and the breathing space we require. This is what they need. I suppose it's one of these things where we get a difference between what we need and what we want. Always a case in life, isn't it? So let me see. I had written that stuff down in the wrong note. So we're told that in a moment there's another problem. Here we go. 31. Oh, that's why I have not written down 32. That's why I've got a problem here. I've missed a note. Our space, my lord. Right, there we go. That's where it should be. Sorry about that, folks. I was just trying to figure out where did it go, and I forgot. I couldn't write it. Right. So here's the crux of the problem for Leto. The field commander will hold the shuttle here until dawn as a pretext. The guild highliner that brought us is going on about its business, and the shuttle's supposed to make contact with a cargo ship taking up a load of space. Our space, my lord. Our space, not someone else. This is Atreides' space, which is worth an awful lot, isn't it? I'm just wondering about the kind of financial situation here. Here's your first big payout, I suppose. So here's what we're told. The Highliner's heading off, so they're delaying this shuttle. And the reason is that the shuttle was also going to be carrying these spice hunters from the old regime. In other words, from the Harkonnens. Now, these spice hunters have opted to leave with the change of a fife. And we're told that the judge of the change is allowing it. We're told also that they're valuable workers, and there's about 800 of them. And before the shuttle leaves, Leto wants Gurney to persuade them to stay. And I think that the language here is quite interesting. Here we go. How strong a persuasion, sire? And again, how far do you want me to go is an interesting question. I want their willing cooperation, Gurney. I want, and that's what I put there. This is what Leto wants. So how strong a persuasion, if they're unwilling, how far will Gurney go? Question mark is what I've put down here. Violence, threats, etc. But he wants them to go willingly. And I sort of made a wee note. I think this is a wee bit to do with how the Atreides operate. But what we're getting is that he wants them willingly to stay, and that he needs their skills and experience. And the fact that they're leaving may suggest that they're not part of the Harkonnen machine. We're told that Howat believes that there might be some bad ones in the group. And I think this is interesting. We're told he sees assassins in every shadow. Now, 34. This is, I want their willing cooperation, Gurney. Those men have experience and skills we need. The fact that they're leaving suggests they're not part of the Harkonnen machine. Howat believes there could be some bad ones planted in the group, but he sees assassins in every shadow. And that's Leto talking. Thufir has found some very productive shadows in his time, my lord. And there are some he hasn't found. Now, this whole little exchange here, I think it works on a number of levels. Thufir sees assassins in every shadow, and I've written, is he paranoid? Question mark. And I went, no, not as we pointed out, not in this world. And this is a dangerous universe, and there are all sorts of nutty things going on in the shadows. We've already had an attempt on Paul's life. I thought what was interesting was, so I just thought about Howat's caution we're being told that Howat's work has actually done some good here. Excuse me. And I was wondering, when he says Howat has found some very productive shadows in his time, productive. I actually wrote down here, does he mean Gurney and Duncan and even Yui? Are these the types of shadows that Howard has found over the years through his intrigues and stuff, or maybe it's just threats that he's managed to whittle out. But the suggestion here is that I suppose Howard doesn't really see. I thought we talked about the competency of Howard's security, and I was just thinking that Gurney doesn't really see him here as being incompetent in that sense. Not certainly not by his response. And here's another. So we get a little bit about. I suppose that gives us a question about Howard. Do you think Howard's paranoid? No. What about Gurney? Tells us a little bit about Gurney and what he thinks of Howard, I suppose. And then we have another little thing from Leto. But I think planting sleepers in this outgoing crowd would show too much imagination for the Harkonnens. And possibly, sire, is Gurney's response. Where are these men? And I've just put down here, I think planting sleepers in the outgoing crowd, too much imagination for the Harkonnen. And after, I don't know what you think about this one, guys, but after having met the Harkonnens and looked at their plot and their plans and what's going on here and all of this, I wouldn't consider them individuals with a lack of imagination by any standards. If you see what I mean, they're absolutely bonkers, I think. But imagination is not a trait that they're lacking. Certainly not the Baron, anyway. It's certainly not Piter. So, excuse me, I'm just going to close this door over here. But I've just actually put down there. Is this a huge misjudgment on Leto's part? Goodness gracious! Someone's cooking downstairs, and I can smell the food, and it's driving me nuts. There we go. So, in terms of, sorry about that, folks. In terms of what we were told at the beginning of the chapter by the epigraph, right here, this bit. Where are we? Would it be more likely to suggest he had lived so long in the presence of extreme danger that he misjudged its intensity? Misjudgment. And that was the thing in the epigraph that I said, fair enough. Has he misjudged the Harkonnen by suggesting that there's too much imagination, that he thinks that they're lacking in imagination, or that a certain thing would be too imaginative? And they've just bricked up. They've just had a guy being walled up into a part of a house for a month, isn't it? With a hunter-seeker just to have a go at Paul. And surely that requires a bit of imagination, doesn't it? How to get this guy. And he wasn't found. He got past all of these guys, So I thought Gurney's response here is more measured, possibly, sire. As in, I don't know. So where are these men? And Gurney's, we're going to have another little sort of thing here. Again, thinking about Leto's judgment. We get this little thing here. I've written down, here's how the Atreides operate. Here's what Leto wants Gurney to do. Let's read it. Okay. I suggest, here we go. This is Leto's suggestion. I suggest you go down and play a tune or two to soften their minds. Then turn on the pressure. You may offer positions of authority to those who qualify, offer 20% higher wages than they received under the Harkonnens. And the response here, I just thought interesting. He wants to play a bit of music, soften them up, and turn up the pressure, offer them 20%. And that's it, pretty much. That should do, shouldn't it? Gurney's response to that is, so in terms of the two men operating here, I suppose, compare and contrast, no more than that, sire, and that's here we go. Here's the difference in the two men. What Leto knows, what Gurney knows. I know the Harkonnen pay scales. To men with their termination pay in their pockets and the wanderlust on them, well, sire, 20% would hardly seem proper inducement to stay. Leto's looking cheap here. the response is, Leto said one thing, I want this. And I think this is another motif with him, I suppose, a character trait. Sorry, I'm trying to get this book to stay down here a wee bit. Let me just put a bit of weight on it with something else. Yeah. Oh, goodness, Carl Jung. That's a big book. That'll keep it in place. Right, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is another misjudgment, isn't it? 20% should sort them out. Really, they've just got their finishing pay. They've been stuck on this planet, and they're looking to go out and spend it and have a holiday and happy days. And you're going to earn them 20% of something. It's not much of an incentive, and it really doesn't sound like it, does it? Leto's response here is to speak impatiently. He's impatient with, and I think the bottom line is here is Gurney's correct, and he tells him, okay, use your own discretion in particular cases. Just remember that the treasury isn't bottomless. Hold at the 20% whenever you can. We particularly need spice drivers, weather scanners, dune men, any with open sand experience. Excuse me. So there we go. I mean, it's cash. That's Leto's incentive here. Go play them a song. That'll do. And it's very uninsightful of him, I think. I don't know what you think yourselves, guys, but I just thought he's not really got these people right at all here. Gurney's there to stand in, and I think Gurney's very polite to him here. And yeah, Leto's impatience, I think, is a character trait. And we get this the things that he needs as opposed to the things he wants, I suppose, is coming out here. Men with open sand experience, dune men, this kind of thing, weather scanners and spice drivers. But then we get this response from Gurney. I understand, sir. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity of the sand. That's Habakkuk 1:9, by the way. So we're going to get a bunch of quotations pertaining to biblical Abrahamic religious texts, etc. So Habakkuk, yeah, there we go. Habakkuk's kind of interesting. How do we know these are direct quotes from the Old Testament, if you like. Just to let you know what I found out a wee bit. So thou shalt come for violence, the faces shall sup up at the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity of the sand. We've got a bunch of this from Gurney here. I'll just had a wee quick nosy at this just to let you know. The Septuagint, so Habakkuk's a minor prophet of the Hebrew Bible. And he's an interesting character, actually. I'm put it this way, whenever I'm done here, I'm going to go have a nosy at him. The Septuagint, which is an early version of the Bible, the Christian Bible, calls him Ambakub in the Greek form, and in the Vulgate he's known as Habakkuk. That's the Latin. So, but Habakkuk is this chap. His stuff in the book of Habakkuk is a set of 5 oracles about what we would call the Chaldeans, which is actually the Babylonians. He's an interesting chap, actually. He's one of these people who's openly questioned the Abrahamic God, I suppose. And he has a relationship to 2 things that I think are quite important here. Well, sort of. Again, we're not reading too much into this, but there's an association with the Lion's Den story in Daniel, and also an association with bilocation, believe it or not. So of all the people to quote, and bilocation is being in more than one place at one time. If you see what I mean, excuse me. And as we've had a wee bit of a chat. This is a trait of the Kwisatz Haderach, and by Lashem, I think, in a particular type of mystic, to be able to be in 2 places at once, if you see what I mean. There's something to do with Habakkuk there as well. So just a pretty interesting thing. We're going to get We're going to get a trio of religious quotations from Gurney, and we might associate that they're from the Orange Catholic Bible, but they're all Abrahamic in origin, for want of a better term, to put those three religions in together. Let's see. Yeah, I've just written here a very moving quotation the Duke said, and I've just written, does he get it? You know, Leto's head here, I think it's yeah, sure, whatever, you know, on we go, this kind of thing. Turn your crew over to the lieutenant, have him give them a short drill on water discipline, and then bed the men down for the night in the barracks adjoining the field. Field personnel will direct him, and don't forget the men for Howard. 300 of the best, sir. Where should I go to send them? Setting up the scene next. Let me see. We'll hold staff here. This is the council room. Taking over a council room topside here. We'll hold staff here. I want to arrange a new planetary dispersal order with armored squads going out first. And again, more about Leto here, but planetary dispersal, send things around the planet, armored squads. And just very much remembering that this is a military family, pretty much, isn't it? They're in all sense a private family that has their own army, and I've just put military, and this catches Halleck stopped in the act of turning away and caught Leto's eye. Are you anticipating that kind of trouble? Sire, I thought there was a judge of the change here. And I just made a wee note here that you're anticipating that kind of trouble. I thought mimicked what Jessica said. Do you remember whenever she realizes that there's a particular myth about that's been sown on Arrakis by the missionary or protective, and she goes, oh my God, basically, they put that one here. You know, is that bad? That I get that kind of mimicking, almost mirroring that sentiment. And we get a mention of the judge of the change again, which is going to be quite important, of course, because we're going to find out that's Leah Kynes. But we're just, again, Herbert's mentioning this character and we haven't seen them. Judge of the change, let's see. And just to read, we've had a wee look at this again. But essentially, the judge of the change is an official appointed by the Landsraad High Council and the Emperor to monitor a change of fief, a canly negotiation, or formal battle in a war of assassins. The judge's arbitral authority may be challenged only before the High Council with the Emperor present. So, as often it's said, kind of that Kynes is considered the Emperor's man. If you look at a lot of the versions of Dune, etc., the judge of the change is appointed by the Landsraad High Council and the Emperor. There's two positions, if you like, behind it. And of course, is it that bad? We'll be doing battle here. Open and secret. And I kind of put down simply that the basis of all warfare is deception, isn't it? And that there will be plenty of blood spilled before we're through. And again, these how we look at these people, this society, I suppose. We have to look at it in context of what it is in this universe, but we can always, look at ourselves, I suppose. It's Leto comes across as quite, I don't know, ruthless, to be honest with you. Oh, I've got an idea how many people can die for my idea. This kind of thing, these kind of generals and leaders that are, I don't know. So it it solicits another religious quote from Halleck. And the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. That's Exodus 4:9. Again, and Leto sighs. Hurry back, Gurney. And as much as Gurney gives him these quips and quotes and various things like this, I honestly think that either Leto's not interested or just doesn't have time for them, or maybe doesn't get them. Very good, my lord. Here we go. Behold, as a wild ass in the desert, go I forth to my work. That's Job 24:5. There we go. And that's our little trio of religious quotations from Gurney, who will keep coming up with these. He's very much an Old Testament creature, isn't he? Gurney Halleck, I think, in some ways. And of course, the whip, we're told this whip scar ripples to his in his grin. But I've asked the question here. I was simply wondering. I wonder how religious is Gurney, and I've actually put very question mark. And I suppose we get to watch Gurney head out, and we talk about characters, how they arrive, how they leave, if you see what I mean. And it's often worth having a wee note as we get to compare them. And he strode to the centre of the room, paused to relay his orders, and hurried on through the men. So stride is really how his, I think, again, entrance and exit is characterised. And we get Leto shaking his head at this man's back. And here we go. And as I said, as much as how Leto reacts to him, here's what Leto thinks of him. Goodness gracious, put that down. I'm wrecking a book here. That's Carl Young. Not too worried. Right, there we go. Let's see. How Halleck was a continual amazement. Head full of songs. All right, let's just read it. A head full of songs, quotations, and flowery phrases at the heart of an assassin when it came to dealing with the Harkonnens. A continual amazement. You kind of the way Halleck's described throughout this, I don't know how to take that. We get get the term savage, I suppose, used with him, but in terms of how he deals with the Harkonnen and so on, there's something of a brute about Gurney, and the surprise is that he could possibly be intelligent and educated and learn all this stuff, I suppose. So he's a musician who can quote religious texts, etc. Again, we've been told that he's a kind of warrior troubadour. And within the Pfeiffer-like system, if that's the case, maybe he's picked up all of this stuff by himself, or maybe it's just that he is the son of a troubadour, if you see what I mean, and has become a fighting man because of it. I don't know. It raises a few questions about Gurney. And he has the heart of an assassin when it comes to dealing with Harkonnens. And I've made a wee note that we should, if we're in the know, of course, Paul and Jessica are Harkonnens. There we go. So off Leto goes. Casual salutes, hand waves, etc. We're told he recognizes a propaganda corpsman, gives him a message. The propaganda chap. And here's his propaganda. Not that it's really propaganda, it's just it's a morale thing. Those who brought their women, let them know where their women are and that they're safe. And then as for the others who, in other words, who didn't bring their own women, they might want to know that there are more women here than men on the planetary population. And so this is all about sex, isn't it? And I've just made a big comment here, male army. Which will be pretty important. And by the time we get to the God Emperor of Dune, we should have a fair collection of Herbert's ideas about the nature of the military, and in particular the homosexual nature of the military is a big part of the whole Dune series, and especially where he flips it in God Emperor. And we get rid of all the men, and we have an all-female, and we start from that point on really getting all-female armies, don't we? Which is pretty interesting. And he slaps this. There's a little thing here at the end where he slaps this man on the arm, and it's not a hey, well done, well, good to see you again. This is actually so something that could be, I suppose, assumed to be a friendly gesture. It's good to see you again. Tap on the arm actually means, this is urgent, do it immediately. And I thought that was quite, it says a lot, I think, doesn't it? I think Leto's odd, I suppose. He nods to his men, he smiles, he trades pleasantries with them. And we get another particularly interesting phrase here. He trades pleasantries. Let me just catch this bit up here. He nodded to the men, smiled, traded pleasantries with a subaltern. There we go. Subaltern's an interesting word. If you look it up, subalternus, isn't it? Below, it means below everything else, below every other thing. He exchanges pleasantries with a person who is beneath everything. What the hell does that mean? Is that a tramp or something? Is it one of his own men? And if that's the case, why? Yeah, why is this man so beneath? It's a really odd phrase, isn't it? And here we go. Command must always look confident, he thought. Looks, not is, looks confident. All that faith, riding on your shoulders while you sit in the critical seat and never show it. He breathed a sigh of relief when the lift swallowed him and he could turn and face the impersonal doors. They have tried to take the life of my son, and he can't shake it. And and we're at the end of that chapter, but indeed that's the 5th time we've heard that phrase. I've got to get control of myself, got to get rid of my rage, got to get my anger down, got to calm down. They've tried to kill my son, and he is angry. And it's as simple as that, because he's angry. Angry people don't think right. Now, if you really want to have a wee bit of insight into this, this is not new knowledge. If you want to have a look at, let me see, Aristotle's The Art of Rhetoric, isn't it? You'll see, and you get to it. Was it in Poetics? I'm not too sure. You'll get to it. So, for example, in rhetoric, the first thing that you should learn how to do is to stay calm. Learn how to keep your cool. Be calm. Because then the second thing is you're going to learn how to make people angry. If you see what I mean, because it's as good a way of getting what you want as you will appear cool as their cucumber, as Wolf Sternhammer would say. Cool as their old cucumber, while your opponent looks absolutely nutty and deranged, I suppose. So angry people, it depends on what type of anger and how that works, I suppose. But we also have how would we put it? Sorry, it'll come to me of a particular word I'm trying to think of, But there we are at the end of chapter 11, folks. And I don't know, have we been too hard on Leto? And I suppose what I'm wondering from you guys is, at the end of this chapter, what do we consider about the epigraph at the start then? Should we, and it's worth doing these epigraphs actually. Did he blind himself? To the perils of Arrakis? Is he doing this to himself? Or has he misjudged change in intensity? Or did he sacrifice himself for his son? If the third one's to be believed, then he sacrificed an awful lot of people for his son, not just himself, There we go. So I don't know what you think about that, guys. All evidence indicates that the Duke was a man not easily hoodwinked. I disagree. I think he's astute in some ways. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's that stupid. I just don't think he's as advertised. There's a good chance that the pressure on Leto here, is part of the Harkonnen plan, isn't it? To disrupt, to get them not trusting each other, to get them not thinking clearly. Let them see traps everywhere, and let them find them everywhere. And whenever it's the whole point is whenever they think they've dealt with all this nonsense and they think that they're safe. And I think that Leto misjudging things in this chapter, there's quite a few misjudgments. I don't know if you'd agree with me. He misjudges badly how to keep the men on the planet. I think not disastrously or anything, but he's got it wrong. And as a person who wants for nothing, you cannot really relate to having a large pay packet, in your pocket at the end of a job, and the desire to go wild and have a holiday and have a bit of fun with it. He doesn't get that. He's not aware of how much the Harkonnen pay, even though Gurney is. And I think he misjudges that. And I think how he looks at Gurney, he's amazed at Gurney, because I think there's something of what I get a sense of the noble savage, that's how Gurney is viewed to a certain degree by the Atreides. I'm not too sure if that's correct or not, but Gurney is certainly an example compared to Leto. I'd say that one looks educated, one looks sophisticated, one is skillful and sure and confident, and walks about that way, casual. If you see, I mean, Gurney's casual. Gurney knows his business. Gurney knows what's what. Gurney's a real, not the, he's not, he's not the son of a royalty. Basically, that kind of thing. He hasn't had his arse wiped for him his entire life, and everything that Gurney sees here is kind of correct, and and has this religious aspect to him. He's a musician. He's a deadly warrior. In many senses, Gurney is so much more astute, I think, and so much more of a rounded individual than Leto is. Though there's obviously some great pain and heartache in his life, that he's happy to very much slaughter. Where's the Harkonnens? I'm ready to kill, and it is kind of a. I suppose if you think about being a troubadours, bards, musicians, these kind of things is a creative thing, whereas killing is the opposite of that, isn't it? And I'm wondering how much of Gurney's religious outlook creates a morality for him to kill, I suppose. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Well, listen, folks, we're coming up to 10 to midnight, and I think the banter's slowed down a wee bit. I'm sure we lose a few people here and there. So I'll say goodnight, and thank you very much for joining me as usual. Next chapter is chapter 12. And yes, indeed, we're heading on there. The whole theory of warfare is calculated risk. Everything's says the Jew. I'm looking forward to that one. And we're really starting to move through the book quite rightly. We haven't got 100 pages through yet. We're only up to page 89. So if you're looking to join us for Thursday at 9 o'clock, chapter 12, which is begins with the epigraph, over the exit of the Arrakis landing field, crudely carved as though with a poor instrument, there was an inscription that Muad'Dib was to repeat many times. That's the chapter. So there we go. That's where we'll be on Thursday. And we're getting battered rightly here. I don't know if you can hear the noise hitting the windows, but I'll say good night, folks. Colleges and Camels saying fun night all. Good night to all of you. Look after yourselves no matter where you are. Keep yourselves safe. And thanks very much for joining me as all. Take it easy, folks, and all the best. Where do we go? There we go.